Are we going to talk about an animal before we start? I mean, you're listening to Let's Stay Together, a podcast about Fruit Basket by Natsuki Takaya. I'm Ellen.
And I'm Kayla.
And today we're having our mid-series recap special. Woo! I know, I'm so excited. We're at the halfway point of the Furuba manga, which is so exciting.
Oh my god.
It's like we made it halfway through.
We're halfway there.
Yeah, living on a prayer. This is the quality content that we're bringing you today.
Never one to avoid the obvious joke.
Yes. So we're going to discuss the series so far. So I have written a summary of the series so far, and then we're going to do a discussion of like things like characters, character motivations, and arcs and themes. Then we have our questions that were submitted by lovely listeners, which is great. I'm so excited to answer them, actually. Then we'll do a spoilery discussion of what's to come, since we always do a spoilery discussion. And there were a couple of questions that were spoilery, so I put them in the spoiler section. So if you ask a question, it doesn't get answered in the beginning, it's because it's going to get answered in the spoilers. So yeah.
I think we should take your summary and speed it up. Like a
so it'll be like like a tape sound.
Yeah. Like a disclaimer.
Yes. Warning. For those consuming Furuba. I'll get right on that. I mean, how about I just read it really fast? It'll be the same. I mean,
and then every couple of seconds you'll be like,
yeah, exactly. It's just like when I voice act Ritsu. It'll be fine. And also the Meisho-san or whatever. All right. So the series so far, Toru Honda was invited to live with the Soma family, a family burdened with a curse that causes members of the family to be possessed by spirits of the Chinese zodiac and the cat, who, according to legend, was left out of the banquet that determined the order that the zodiac animals rotate through every year. Toru Honda's mother passed away in an accident in the spring before the series begins, and though Toru is often in high spirits, we've recently seen that her mother's death may be taking more of a toll on her than originally it seemed. There are some things that she doesn't want the Somas and her friends to know that she's dealing with, as she revealed in the beach arc that we just saw. Beach. Uo and Hana, Toru's best friends, had relationships and their own individual moments with Toru's mother as well, especially Uo, who was in a gang in middle school. Kyoko helped her when she decided to leave the gang because she's a badass, and Kyoko, like Uo, was also in a gang in her youth. We learned that Toru's friend Hana can understand the feelings of and manipulate others with Denpa, and she struggled with this as a child, but being befriended by Toru and Uo in middle school seems to have brought her some kind of like inner peace and enabled her to control her Denpa more. She also has her own memories of Kyoko, Toru's mother, giving her words of wisdom as well. We've learned that Kyoko was a kind and knowledgeable woman, and Toru often gives advice, or as I call it, the knowledge drop, to the Soma family that her mother gave her. The 13 members of the Soma family, as stated before, are cursed by the spirits of the zodiac and the cat. When hugged, they transform into their animal forms, and they remain in that form for an unspecified period of time and then transform back.
Spirits of the zodiac and Zoidberg.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Tori's true form. I mean, the physical appearance of the Junichi, the 12 spirit. Sometimes we switch back and forth. I don't think I've ever said, but Junichi just means 12 spirits or whatever. So the Junichi. Their physical appearance in their human form stems from their zodiac form. Some characters like Kisa were even bullied for their sort of quote-unquote abnormal appearance and abnormal hair and eye color. And some of them seem to have a connection to or physical abilities that are based on their animal spirits. Shigure, the dog, for example, he hears wild dogs at the beginning of the story and knows there's a landslide that crushes Toru's tent, which was the inciting incident of the story and why she ended up living with them in the first place. Yuki calls his rat friends to help dig out Toru's tent, and they also come to him in the woods when Kyo and he argue at the lake house. The Jason incident. Yuki also, Ayame, Yuki's brother, has difficulty adjusting to extreme temperatures because he's a snake.
Because I'm a snake.
Exactly. And he transforms into a snaky form. Often, Ritsu, the monkey, appears to be a strong climber and like pulled himself back onto the roof in the manga after almost slipping off. Hatsaru, the cow, has two personalities, a chill white side, as they call it, and a black side that comes out when he's angry. Kagura, the boar, is tough and expresses her feelings physically, often like charging through walls and causing a ton of property damage to Shigure's house. Momiji, the rabbit, often behaves kind of energetically, and Hattori is quiet, like a seahorse? Question mark. Kyo, possessed by the spirit of the cat of the Zodiac story, has an additional form known as the cat's true form. The bracelet that he wears, rumored to be made of bones and blood, keep him from transforming into his true form. The cat of the family has previously been treated as an outsider, including Cosmo's grandfather. It was recently revealed to us that, and to Toru, that Kyo will be confined by himself after he graduates within the Soma compound. We also learned recently that Kyo knew Toru's mother when he was little, and he even knew about Toru, but doesn't seem like she knew him. So we saw that during the beach arc, as you said. The Somas can't seem to do anything without the consent of the head of the family, Akido. Akido has been shown to be manipulative, abusive, and a dangerous head of the family. Akido injured Hattori after he and his girlfriend Kana asked for permission to be married, confined Yuki as a child, and abused Kisa and other members of the family after expressing affection for others. Nishigure seems to have an intimate relationship with Akido and seems to be the only person capable of manipulating Akido. Akido reveals at the end of their time at the beach that he is the god of the Zodiac, the master of their souls, which explains why no one can go against what he wants. The bond of the Zodiac curse holds all 13 and Akido together tightly, it seems. Social isolation caused by not being able to be touched by others and looking strikingly different, fear of the family secret being discovered and causing people to reject them, and the emotional impact of being cursed on the Junichi and their families, and the sort of cult-like nature of the inner family and the family head causes the Junichi a lot of pain and strife, as we've seen. But all of the characters that we've met so far have things that they want to do in their lives and have changed from the beginning of the series, especially Kyo and Yuki, who both realized their feelings for Toru during the beach trip. Toru realizes at the end of the trip that the curse binds them all together and it keeps them from achieving their goals and is resolved to break it. How was that?
Very, very good.
Yay! Only like 5 minutes. That's the series so far. So
That's what you missed on Furuba.
Yeah, really. Now you're caught up. You don't have to read the first half. Unless you want to see all the shocking moments for yourself. Which is my favorite part of reading it, even rereading it. All right. The first thing I thought we might start out with is just to kind of talk about all the characters we met and kind of discuss their like motivations or goals that we've seen so far. Is that
okay?
a good okay. So the first character that we met in the series is Toru Honda, of course, and she promised her mother that she would graduate from high school because her mother wasn't able to, which seems to be a very strong motivation of hers. I went back and listened to our first episode, which, first of all, thank you all for suffering through that terrible audio quality in our first, 15 episodes, because I was like, oh, so different now. But
yeah, I've heard way worse.
Yeah.
First episodes.
Well, that's good. We were talking about how I was like, if your tent that you were living in the woods by yourself was crushed by a landslide and then you realized people turned into animals and your uniform was all dirty and stuff, would you still go to school the next day? And we were like, no. So she's obviously extremely motivated. And in fact, when there was an incident where she basically made herself sick from being upset by not doing very well on a test, and Kyo healed her with soup or whatever. And Hattori gave her a mystery shot. Wasn't that when we determined that he doesn't know that he's a doctor he doesn't know how to be a doctor? The night school doctor.
Yeah. My theory is that it's a B12 shot.
Yes. I think it's a good theory. But I still stand by the theory that he needs to go to night school.
Yeah. I do like Hattori, the night school
doctor. And also the night school lawyer, the gang lawyer. Our spin-off series. Recently, we've seen that Toru is extremely motivated to help all the Junichi kind of achieve their various goals and motivations by breaking the curse. That was what she resolved to do in the end of the last chapter we read. Mm-hmm. Any other things we can say about Toru's kind of motivations or anything?
No, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. A lot of her motivations in the beginning of the series were kind of focused around kind of meeting her mother's goals and, making her mother proud, essentially. And now we're starting to get some more kind of outside motivations from that. Mm-hmm.
And we also saw her kind of freak out about her mom that was going on at the beach too.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's safe to say she had a lot of her identity kind of bound up in her mother. Mm-hmm. And she's starting to have some slight crises around that.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So the next character I want to talk about is Yuki. So I wrote for my notes that I made. I said be able to feel his feelings. I can't remember exactly what he said, but there's a line that he says that's I want to, experience things without being overcome by my feelings or my emotions or whatever. Mm-hmm. another thing that I think is a motivation of his is like, you know, to be able to hope for better things or hope for a better future. I feel like a lot of the things that happened recently with him kind of like against Akito is like, just don't be confused that there's no hope for you. And Yuki's like, I don't think that's true. So yeah. Also, it seems like he's been motivated since like post true form times, I think, that to try more things that make him uncomfortable and go outside of his comfort zone as a part of this growth that he's having, experiencing.
Yeah, that's something he said, like, straight up, is that he's trying to, like, when he's talking to Ayame about, like, taking on the student council responsibilities, and he says, like, he's doing it because he doesn't want to, or whatever he said. Like,
yeah, something like that, essentially.
Yeah.
Yes. And then speaking of Yame, we saw that they have a motivation in common of wanting to create things that like don't exist without them. I don't think we've seen that so much recently. That was kind of something that seemed to motivate him through the beginning of the series, even though we didn't really see it. It's like if you look back, him wanting to have his garden and
I think that was kind of like his his thing to hold on to, like before he had much hope elsewhere. Was like, because they talked about like having a thing that wouldn't exist without them, and so now he's becoming a more well-rounded human being, so I think has to rely on that less, although I do think it's still something he cares about.
I think so. Yeah, I agree with you. But yeah, so those are kind of the motivations, at least, that I think we've seen so far, some of his goals. We have Kyo, of course, who began the series crashing through Toru's bedroom. There was I just remembered that scene where the tree breaks through the window, and then she reminded him that he broke the ceiling, and as if he almost forgot it, which was really funny.
Yeah.
But I think Kyo's motivation so far has been, it seems like at this point he's his motivation that we saw when after the true form scenes is that he told Shisho that he wanted to become, you know, like a better person, someone that Shisho can be proud of. I wrote become a stronger man in my notes, but to be someone that, you know, Shisho is proud to call his son, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I have as motivation that recently also came up after his meeting with Akito is to just enjoy the time that he has until he's confined. He literally said that about Toru. He was thinking that about Toru.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's changed from like his motivation to like beat Yuki at the very beginning, which
You're right.
Which again was kind of a desperation motivation, kind of like Yuki's
plants. Yes.
Plant thing. Like, it's just like the one thing they have right now to hold on to, but now they're becoming, you know, real boys. And so,
yes, they're turning into fine young gentlemen.
Yes.
Yes. And yeah, you're right. The motivation to beat Yuki was very strong. It was the only thing that was motivating him for a long time, and the fact that he had to stay and like go to school and shit, he was like not having it. And now he's just like, I just want to like enjoy this time that I have until that happens. He's like resigned, but set to enjoy his life until then.
He even says like, I don't care that much anymore. Like, I don't think he would say that he's given up on his beat Yuki goal out loud, but I think kind of in his heart he's kind of shifted that.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think we're going to see them fight as much anymore. Based on that
and they
time
haven't been fighting much lately. Even the confrontations they have, they're not like fighty confrontations like we had the bit at the beach where Yuki's like, don't fuck this up, and he got mad, but you know, they weren't
because
I'm
me
mad like they used to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I like how at the beach Yuki finally is like, he's manipulating Kyo into doing all these things instead of like fighting with him directly. It's pretty good.
Yuki's his goal is to embrace his inner asshole. He's doing a great job, and I'm very proud of him.
I'm very proud of him too. His favorite Yuki's coming up. Next I have Momiji. So I put Momiji doesn't. He said that he has a goal, but he doesn't think he'll be able to achieve it. We saw during the beach arc.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've seen like any other. So I have listed all the characters. Some of them I feel like we haven't seen like a super strong motivation for them at this point. But I think Momiji's one of them. But we know that he has some kind of goal and that'll be hard for him to achieve. He said.
Yeah, he's a fairly private person.
Yeah, turns out
compared to some of the others, we haven't seen a lot of his interior, like life.
No, that's true. Other than talking about his time with his mother, right? Too, and his father and sister, Toru. We haven't seen anything about himself. His internal motivations yet. But we'll see. I think we'll see more growth from him to come because he's been kind of a side character, and he's going to continue to be, which means unfortunately he doesn't get a lot of time in the spotlight. But So Momiji. Kisa I have next. I wrote become stronger and more courageous. I think it's like to be, I don't know. Yeah, be more courageous. There's some specific thing that she says when she's talking to Yuki in her debut chapters. I forget exactly what it is though. But also to be able to face her fears and be around other people.
Yeah.
I think is kind of her motivation. I think she's also driven. We've seen her be kind of driven to be closer to Toru or like have this relationship with Toru, especially earlier like on in her kind of story arc, and that caused a lot of issues with Hiro being envious of or jealous of that. So
yeah, it kind of seems like sort of in general she kind of wants to be more like proactive about like the people who are close to her, because she's also been more like, because she talked about how like she thought Hiro hated her for a while, but like now that she knows it's untrue, she's been more like spending more time with Hiro and obviously spending time with Toru and stuff. So
yeah, for sure. And then of course when it comes to Hiro, I think that his goal is to become a more empathetic person because of his relationship and how the things that he did kind of impacted Kisa. Yeah, as we've seen. I think Kisa doesn't know yet what happened, but Hiro knows that Akito went after her after Hiro said that he loved her. Yeah, to Akito.
He wants to become a prince.
Yes, that's someone that Kisa can be proud to be with. And we've seen him struggling with that, continuing to struggle with that at the beach arc. But I think he's still grown a bit, though. Yeah. He, like, chilled out a bit. He was trying to be nice to Toru, except for all the times that he sassed her about her mom. But although I think we decided that he wasn't trying to specifically be sassy. He was just like, why do you always talk about your mom all the time?
Yeah. He's just a blunt person. Yes. So, like, even when he's not actually trying to be a little dick, he's just
kind of a little dick.
Yeah, he just doesn't really think everything through. He just says what's on his mind.
So I think that's kind of his motivation. And then I have Hataru next. So we've seen so far Haru to be someone who's interested in taking care of other people. Like, he often is the one who comes in and, like, helps. He's, like, the only one who Yuki will talk to about his feels at this point. Yeah. Like, his deep feelings. Other than sort of, like, the cryptic things that he tells Toru. But
yeah, there's been talk about him, like, trying to protect and care for people, sometimes at, like, his own expense. So
I think that may be his motivation so far.
I think we can say some of his motivation is to, look out for Yuki.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. He doesn't seem to put himself before other people, though. Yeah. Like, he was also the one who came to find Kisa and was active in trying to get her to go back to school and stuff like that.
Yeah. And, like, Yuki even points out that, like, he does stuff like that a lot. Like,
Yuki's always like, you worry about other people. What about you?
Yeah, worrying about everyone else. Yeah. Yeah, and I think Yuki has a top spot in that, but he obviously, in general, just kind of tries to look out for everyone else.
I think so. Another character that we met, I'm going to skip around in this list a little bit. Another character we met so far is Ritsu Soma, the monkey. And I think that Ritsu is trying to develop more confidence. Yeah. To eat his soba with confidence. The confidence of Ayame. Yes. Is his motivation. Yeah. And I think to be a person that his parents and other people can be proud of, right? It seems like he's working through that. Yeah. We don't get to see a lot of Ritsu. That's just from those, like, 2 chapters that we saw him in. So we'll see how that goes. Moving on to other older members of the Zodiac. We have, like, Hattori. I think that we've seen so far that maybe his motivation is to protect the younger, like, Junichi and Toru. And because the reason I think that is because he talked about it at the lake, I think. He's like, I just want to make sure that the same things that happen to us don't happen to them. And then we often see him coming in and stepping in to take care of them.
Yeah, I think it's starting to change a little bit, but I think up until pretty recently, his motivation has been, like, to not let others get hurt the way he was. Yeah. Including himself again.
Yes. Yes, I think you're right.
Like, even when he was, like, first introduced and being kind of a dick, what he was trying to do was drive Toru away so she wouldn't get hurt.
Yes. And they were all scared of him. But he's a kind person. He patted Toru on the shoulder, we saw. Mayu cried for him. I mean, I don't know that we've seen any other. And the other thing about him is, like, it's not really his motivation, but he kind of, like, he's like, I'm not going to go against you to Shigure and all his machinations or whatever. So I wouldn't say it's a motivation, but I think he sees that things are happening. But I think he's just, like, he's trying to hedge his bets. Like, he just doesn't want bad things to happen.
Yeah, it's like I think he wants things to change, but he's too afraid of himself and others getting hurt. So
yes,
he doesn't want to push things too much, but if they're gonna happen, he's not gonna stop.
Yeah, he's like, I'm cool with this, but also
Yeah.
don't fuck shit up. And then we met Ayame, who I think his main motivation that we've seen so far is to develop a better relationship with Yuki. He's very like driven by the guilt of like not being close to him as a child, not knowing, not caring about his situation as a child.
Yeah, I think we can say his specific motivation is to forge a better relationship with Yuki, and a slightly more general version of that is to kind of make up for his like shitty behavior in his youth.
Yeah, I think you're right. We've seen a couple other things get alluded to.
Yeah, because he's referenced like his bad behavior in reference to things outside of Yuki. So.
Yes, I think in particular with Yuki we've seen, but yeah, other things too.
Yeah, his obvious one is focused on Yuki, but I think there's allusions to other things he's trying to make up for.
I think you're right. And then we have Shigure, who's
who the fuck knows?
Yeah, who the fuck knows? My notes just, I know we're looking at the same thing. My notes just say question mark, question mark, question mark.
Yeah,
it's like he's definitely motivated to do something.
Yeah.
He
definitely has a goal. He's made allusions to having a goal and being willing to do some questionable things to get that goal. But
to achieve it at the expense of everyone else involved. Yeah. The question is, what is that goal?
Yeah,
we don't know.
There seems to be some general idea of shaking things up, making things change, but it's not very specific.
Changing things within the family, not just like in society or whatever.
He's not like a revolutionary, but
and I guess related to that, there's also Rin, who is
what? He's like, do you hear the people sing the song?
Such a nerd. I mean, actually, I know the people like musical references, so.
As they should.
Yeah, it's right. Everyone is right.
It's good that they do, because I got a million of them and I ain't stopping.
No. The musical train is not going to stop. But speaking of Shigure's mysterious motivations, we learned that Rin feels like the only person she can depend on is Shigure. Like, Shigure is her only hope. Or whatever she said to Hiro in the hospital. And who knows what the fuck her...
Kenobi.
Yeah, basically. Yes. Couldn't make a Princess Leia joke fast enough. Sorry. But yeah, we saw her. She said that in the hospital we saw her interacting with Shigure in like a sort of weirdly sexual way that one time, or like perhaps off-puttingly sexual way that one time. Not weird. She has some kind of motivation that seems to align with Shigure's, and she thinks that Shigure can help her, but I don't know. And then she's skulking around the beach house. Like, what was she doing there? Yeah. We don't know.
Yeah, she's another, clearly is motivated to do something, but it's not clear what that is
yet.
But
what was it? And also, what happened to her? Did she just, like, faint somewhere in the woods on the beach? And then we haven't seen her since then. Who knows what happened? Yeah. She's probably, like, still bleeding internally. Like. Yes, she's there just, like, kicking the sandcastles down every night after they make them or something, hiding in the woods.
I can't remember the exact joke. It's like they said all my bleeding was internal. That's where the blood's supposed to be.
Is that another Arrested Development joke?
No, I think that was Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Okay. All right. And then, we had Rin and Shigure's mysterious motivations that seem to be intertwined. We also met Kureno, who seems to be resigned to his fate with it to remain within the Soho family forever, as Akito wanted, at least. Yeah. He says that he's the happiest of anyone, but that is a lie. We can see.
Yeah, he's got hints of wanting things other than what he has right now, but he's not really motivated to do anything about it at the moment.
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
Yes. And then finally, I think we have... I didn't include in this list... I'm sorry. Uo and Hana are great characters, but I don't really see them as having, like, strong kind of motivations for the course of the story. We've seen how they interacted with other characters in the story, but for the things that are kind of, like, coming... I don't see them as having some... I don't know.
Yeah, they're fairly static characters. Most of their development has already happened.
I mean, we've seen...
Yeah, which doesn't make a bad character.
No, they're great. They're wonderful characters. Yeah. I love them. But, like, I mean, we've seen that Uo has this sort of non-relationship with Kureno. I guess that may change things later. But I don't know about Hana. Hana doesn't seem to have developed any other major connections at this point.
Yeah. And I mean, they both have kind of a motivation to protect Toru.
Yeah, I think so.
But
other than that, I don't know that...
Yeah.
Nothing that's going to change the course of things in the story.
Yeah.
I think. And then... Or, like, I don't know if we're going to see them develop more. That much more. Yes. So then finally, of course, we have Akito, the who we know now is the quote-unquote god of the Zodiac story, whose main desire seems to be to keep them isolated and keep the family together.
Yeah.
Keep things the same.
His motivation is to stop everyone else's motivation.
Yeah, basically. Nobody grow. Everybody stay the same. Yeah. So, yes.
He says, I wish they all were static characters.
It's like, I love Uo and Hana. They're my favorites. So, I also wanted to... Any other things we can say about our characters so far? I don't... I guess other characters that we've met would be like Kyoko. We've seen some of Kyoko's Toru's mother. We've seen some interactions with her and other characters. Mostly it's through Toru, which is kind of an interesting filter. But then sometimes, occasionally, we see her kind of interact with other people. We saw that Kyo has a connection to her, as I stated. And Uo and Hana as well.
Yeah. And I think it's safe to say she does not have any motivations right now.
No, I don't think so. The best jokes are death jokes. I mean, yes. So
death is coming. Might as well laugh at it.
It's true. And there's also, I mean, we met Toru's family. Their motivation seems to be to just like get rid of her, like keep her away from the family, which is so harsh. But yeah,
except for her grandpa, he's cool.
He's pretty rad. And then we also met Kazuma Soma. I don't know that he has a strong. His motivation is to protect Kyo from the confinement. I think we've seen. He basically like resolved to be like, I will not let them confine Kyo. Like fuck all y'all. Basically,
his goal is to be a good papa.
He's a good dad. He got Kyo fireworks.
Yeah,
and he taught him what trains are. It's the best dad. Yeah, we met some other characters. I think that's kind of the major ones.
Yeah, like
we've met all the Zodiac.
Yeah, we met Kakeru and Machi, but not enough to really talk about them yet.
Did we even get their names yet? I forget.
Yeah,
I think we decided we called their names.
Yeah, he met them.
Oh, that's right. He went and talked to them
classroom
in the council room. Yes. Okay.
Before the beach.
The beach. Yeah, you're right. I forgot.
We didn't get their names in the anime, but we did get their names in the manga.
Yes. Yeah. So the beach. I mean the beach. So we met Machi and Kakeru, the student council peeps. We don't know that much about them yet. Yeah. So that'll be interesting when they come back. We're going back to school, so hopefully there's going to be more student council, but I don't remember what chapter comes next. It's good. It's a good time. Yeah. So that's kind of everybody we met so far and their sort of overall motivations that I think are going to kind of move us through the next part of the series.
Yep.
They've been established and changed a lot, like as you said, especially with Kyo and Yuki and Toru.
Yeah.
So one thing we said we wanted to do, to transition to another topic seamlessly, is that we said at the beginning of the series we wanted to track themes and also we wanted to track kind of like the change of the curse, things that we learned about the curse over time. So I thought we could do a little recap of the curse, what we learned so far.
They turn into animals and then they turn naked.
Yeah, basically. In a cloud of poof smoke. That is what we learned so far. That's the first thing we learned about the curse. We also noticed that the people who are cursed tend to also have some kind of like physical attributes that are related to their animal forms as well, to a certain extent. Some of them more than others. We also learned that the person possessed by the cat has a true form, quote unquote.
Yeah.
That is another like monstrous form that they turn into. That is controlled by the like bracelet that's rumored to have been created through like some kind of human sacrifice type situation that prevents them from changing into the true form. I think we learned a couple of other things on the way. Like we learned about the families. So like it's not really only the 13 and God that are the quote unquote God that are affected by the curse. Like obviously their families are also impacted. Like, you know, one parent can't ever hold their child.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of issues that come with that. I guess we also, Momiji explicitly said that there's parents either like completely reject their children or become overly protective of them because of the curse.
Yeah.
So we've seen a lot of family drama that stems from that.
Yeah.
To say the least.
Yeah.
And then most recently we learned that in addition to kind of like the animals of the Zodiac story, the curse includes this bond with a god figure that seems to have kind of like absolute control over them. Like the Junichi aren't able to go against Akito's word because of the curse. It's implied. I guess we also learned that like there are people like Hana can tell that there's something different about the Somas with her Denpa.
Yeah.
Something we learned about the curse early on too. Oh, and then of course we also learned recently that Toru's resolved to break the curse. There's something about something she has put together based on what Akito said and the way that they interact with Akito, the way that the Junichi interact with Akito, that this bond and keeping things unchanging is something that's going to prevent them from achieve. They can't go. I guess, like, you know, if you unpack all of this, it's that the Junichi aren't able to go against Akito. Akito wants everything to remain the same, and so they'll never be able to achieve any of their goals or their motivations that we just talked about.
Yeah.
And so Toru is resolved to then go against that, even at her own expense, the expense of her own safety, probably. Yeah. It's kind of a big deal. Also, to transition to another topic, I think, like, so one of the things we also said that we would kind of track through this is, you know, obviously, like, the themes or the ideas that are being communicated through Furuba, and I think a lot of that revolves around, a lot of those things that we've seen revolve around directly, like, impacted by the curse and the impacts that the curse has on the Junichi. Some of the themes that we've seen so far have been, like, I guess, like, the idea. Well, I mean, obviously a big one is transformation. So we've seen people transforming into animals, and also this kind of, like, transformation as the idea of transformation and growing up over time, right? And we've seen, like, the kind of, it's played out often in, like, the curse, the story of the zodiac itself transforming when being interpreted in different ways, and how that kind of, like, impacts the curse.
Yeah.
I think we've also seen throughout the series, we keep seeing these moments. We haven't seen one recently, but often we see these sort of ideas that maybe I think that Takaya has are kind of translated through Kyoko's advice that Toru then tells people. So, like, when we look at chapters, we see things like the importance of things like forgiveness and being accepted by others as some major themes.
Yeah.
Creating meaningful bonds with others.
Yeah, I think there's
this controlling one.
Yeah, I think there's a big theme of the importance of being accepted and loved by other people.
Yes.
Because, like, we have things where it's like it's kind of like an explicitly stated one during, like, the Kisa chapter where they talk about, like, oh, you have to love yourself before other people can love you. But it's like sometimes it's hard to love yourself unless other people care about you, and so
yeah, her asshole teacher says
that.
And also in Hana's backstory too, Hana's brother is like he prays for someone to become friends with Hana, to accept Hana for who she is.
There's like there's just a general theme of, like, sometimes you need someone else to see the good in you before you can see the good in yourself.
Yes. And that you need to people need to make efforts to be that person.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and, like, if someone sees the good in you, you should try to live up to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. What characters do you think kind of, like, exemplify that? I mean, there's obviously, like, Toru, but
yeah, and I mean, we see that pretty strongly with Kyo, where he's like, one of his things he says, I want to be someone who, you know, Kazuma can be proud to call his son, and how he, like, didn't want to be associated with him in that role because he was ashamed of himself, basically. And then, like, obviously being accepted by Toru helped him to kind of embrace that ability. And we have, like, Hiro saying, like, he wants to become that, you know, that prince that Toru said he can become for Kisa. And
yeah, in both of those cases, Toru is the one who's like, you're already a prince, and he's like, nah. Or, like, Toru points out, like, there's a really early time that we haven't talked about in a long time where Toru talks about, there's a whole, like, onigiri metaphor where the, like, thing on your back, you can't see it, but other people can. That is that everyone has good traits. They all think they're not as good as other people might see different things about them they don't see about themselves, right? Yeah.
And that part also kind of shows, like, the sort of, like, dark temptation of that whole, like, seeing the good in other people is, like, because we have the whole thing about, like, how Kyo and Yuki obviously see traits that they value in themselves in each other, but because of their relationship, it just makes them, like, hate each other more.
Basically. Yeah, like, they're like, I'll never be as good as that guy.
Yeah.
Even recently, Yuki, at the end of the beach arc, he was like, oh, so even Kyo thinks that he's a shitty guy sometimes or something. It's like, yeah, of course he does. Like, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's called multiple times. That's, like, the third time that I can think of offhand. And we, you know, I think it's still unresolved. There's unresolved feelings between Yuki and Kyo. They've gotten a lot more chill.
I think they're more, like, I think internally they're kind of aware that a lot of their hatred stems from wanting to be like the other one in some way or another, but I don't think they would be able to externalize that at this moment.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I definitely think they're not ready to admit it to like each other for sure.
I don't think they're even quite ready to admit it to themselves. I think Yuki might be.
Yeah.
but for the most part, like there's signs that they realize that those aspects of themselves and each other.
Yes.
They're just not going to acknowledge it yet because they're not quite there.
No. There's still half the series to go. I mean,
yes.
I think another really important theme that comes up a lot is like the importance of forgiveness. We've seen it many, many times, I think, so far. Like, and like, I don't know, and also forgiving yourself. So things like trying to leave the gang and stuff and kind of feeling shitty. I try to remember who else. Now that I'm saying this.
That's another good, couldn't see the good in herself until someone else example too.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. Well, example everyone. Like it's
I mean, it's a pretty strong theme with everyone, but a couple of them it's more like obvious.
even like Toru's the one who's often kind of like doling out this advice. But I love this scene where when Hana goes to school, she's like, Hana's like, you don't want to be friends with me, I'm a terrible person or whatever, and Toru's like, you're right, it might not be great being friends with me either, and it was like, yeah, it would be even worse being friends with me. So good. I think them becoming friends and accepting each other helps them all to be better people, which is great. I think we have this like kind of like running theme of being invited to be in a group or not, and being like part of a group or not, and how that can be impactful. Same with the gang. Like the gang is a good example of that too. Uo was trying to find some kind of meaning in her life somewhere that she felt like she belonged, and she was like, this is where I belong, in the gutter with this gang, you know? But really what she wanted was to belong to more of like a family, to have like a family to connect with. So what really happened was that she was kind of, she saw that was possible with Toru, and someone who she thought was kind of like a badass turned out to not be that way. So, well, she's still a badass, but turned out not to be the person that she thought.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like, I think, like, someone who, of course, this applies to is Kyo. So every time we talk about it constantly, how he, like, refuses to sit with people and refuses to be invited. Even, like, Yuki had to taunt him into sitting down with them recently, like, at the beach, the very last scene. It's like, bro, like, they want you to be with them. Like, but yeah, his constant treating himself like he's on the outside is like indoctrinated, kind of like he can't be a part of anything because of the way he's been treated. And we often talked about it a lot last time, this sort of like position of Akito on the outside versus the inside, or like saying Toru's an outsider, saying people are outsiders, keeping people outside, calling the main house, physically dividing it as inside and outside, and stuff like that. One thing that we haven't talked about recently that I feel like came up a lot before was this sort of like home and his relationship to self. Like we had Toru was always being like, my home is my castle, my tent is my castle, and like feeling like it was such a important thing to her to be independent and be on her own. But perhaps recently realizing that's not really the way. That's not the best way. I think we've talked about like the physical locations before, but
I know we've talked about like when she was going back to her family's house, and then they took her back to the Soma house, and she had the whole like I'm home kind of thing, like compared to
Yuki and Kyo too. They went to the main house for New Year's, and then they were going to there, and then they ran back, and they were like, and I think, I mean, also like Uo, and we saw like, especially actually more so in the anime, I think we saw like Uo's kind of relationship, like when she goes to the house, it's all like dark and awful, and then later we see her like kind of after her relationship with her father has kind of healed, later in the future we see her, I don't know, in a more homey environment, and it's brighter and everything, like the actual physical location impacted her. We saw those like scenes where she's in Toru's house, and there's like the kids yelling like outside, and the news on the TV, and like it's all quiet, and there's like the sound of Toru like chopping up the vegetables and stuff. Like those kind of domestic scenes, and how she was like, this environment's bad for me, but it's like, no, it's really what you want. Kyo saying that the Shigure's house is like living in being in lukewarm water.
I like those as like a sad kind of funny thing. Like these characters are so unused to feeling happy and comfortable that when they feel happy and comfortable, they think it feels wrong. Like
so ironic and sad. Yes. It's funny how similar Kyo and Uo are.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Uo is like Kyo 5 years from now or something, you know,
Yeah.
having been through shitty stuff and has moved on a bit.
Yeah, I feel like Uo like sees a kindred spirit in Kyo because she's always kind of like she seems to enjoy like picking on him and spending time with him.
Yes. Yeah, it's pretty charming.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a really common image that we have is that's used a lot to talk about things and move things forward in the plot and demonstrate some of these themes is like people eating together.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw like the kids eating together at school. We had this whole like Uo's backstory while they were out at a restaurant. Kyo often like doesn't sit with people, or he leaves halfway through a meal or something, which
and, like when he sits down, he tends to like face away from the group and stuff.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah.
And then we recently had the soba, like let's eat soba together.
Yeah.
Scene that was kind of a like impromptu meal to have some sense of fellowship because they were all going through some like crazy shit. They were all like feeling really anxious about the future and couldn't really talk about it another way. And so what they were able to do to kind of bond over that was to have a meal together. So we see that often, and I think it's on purpose. It's not just it's a part of daily life, but it's also just a situation where you can actually bring everyone together and see what's going on with all the characters. So it's often a device that Takaya uses. I don't know if it's a theme, but
it's kind of a symbol, like you can kind of tell like what's going on with the relationships by how the meal goes, basically.
Yeah, basically. It's a temperature check for what's going on, essentially. I also have another theme that I wrote down, which is just it's better to be loved than feared. I don't know how to describe it in a different way, but it's like
anti-Machiavelli.
Yeah, basically. It's the contrast. Basically, like I think that this kind of idea is represented by the contrast between Toru and Akito, even that we've seen so far, especially in the beach these last couple of chapters where everyone is like, I want to hang out with Toru more. And you have Akito being like, I'm in control of everything.
Yeah.
And Toru's like, I want to help them. So
yeah, and Akito seems unable to like not conflate fear and love, like because we have like the scene when he's like first greeting everyone at the beach house and it's like, hi, I love you all, and like after we've seen them all like sullenly go over there,
basically.
And talking about, and when he's talking about Yuki, saying like, oh, Yuki's still afraid of me, so he'll come back to me, like
exactly. Yes, you're right. That's a very it's a good strong marker of that idea.
I think change and relationships like are kind of the two big words for the series. So
we did recently talk about how there was like kind of a theme or an idea that like even like a chance meeting with someone can change a lot of things for you. Like happening to meet Toru at school, or like even like Toru running into them in the woods. This is happening to tent camp in the woods has changed a lot of things clearly about her life.
Yeah, it's just kind of a big thing about like the impact other people have on your life, and that can be like a fleeting meeting or a big huge relationship. So
yeah, it's true. I guess one that we haven't talked about yet is kind of like well, like I guess Ritsu said that they want to find a reason for living. I feel like that's something that kind of comes up a lot. Like we talked about all the characters' motivations, but I feel like that's kind of I don't know, maybe not a theme, but also an idea that's sort of recurring. Yeah, which is also exemplified by a Kyoko wisdom drop and Toru talking about her reason for living. Sometimes that reason can change. Yeah, which I think we're seeing. But on a sort of related note to themes, I guess one of my favorite Kyoko wisdom drops is the like it feels like crap, but it'll help you grow. I feel like that is kind of like an idea that's represented a lot, where it's like pain is essential to moving forward in life. The one key thing, we haven't talked about it yet, is the like, hurting people and being hurt by them helps you grow. We talked about that in a while, but that's like a theme that's set up from the beginning. And I think is true throughout the whole series. Like almost everything that kind of that happens sort of relates to that. Like it's being helped by other people, or learning from the ways that you hurt other people is important to helping you grow.
Yeah, and that's just part of being a human being and living in the world.
Yes. Yeah, people who don't live in the real world, like Akito, for example, don't understand that. It's interesting you say that. It's a good point that you say that Akito conflates love and fear, as opposed to like people who, have other maybe real world experience. Seems like Akito's pretty sheltered. We can see from the things that have happened so far, and others who have more experience, I think, don't think like that. All right. those are all the kind of like big things I wanted to talk about so far. I think that we've seen. Yeah. As our recap before we go to questions. I think we're gonna see some big things coming. Obviously, like this is set up. Basically, the point up to now is that we've set up the curse and then set up that Toru is determined now to try to break the curse.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna see everything sort of fall out from there, which will be very interesting.
Yep. Times they are changing.
Yeah, they are. Are you ready to do some questions?
So ready.
Okay, I'm really excited. This is like super exciting. Thank you all for sending questions. We got a lot of questions from like a handful of people, but it was a lot of questions. So excited. So basically, like I organized them into light topics. So there's kind of like the order is that we're going to talk about the manga. There's some questions about the anime. There's a couple questions about us, and then sort of about podcasting. And then we do have some, like I said, we have some spoilery questions. So we'll serve those for the spoiler discussion later.
Yep. And some people ask similar questions, and some people ask multi-part questions. So
yes,
some might be kind of combined. We'll mention, all the names though.
Yeah,
and some might be split up into different sections. So
yeah, I definitely split. Some people would be like, "And what do you think about this? And what do you think about that?" And I was like, "I think these are 3 different questions, so I'm just gonna split them up." But yeah, they have been attributed. So
okay, so
all right.
Question number 1, I guess, kind of asked by 2 different people. Just kind of what started us into Furuba? How did we get into Furuba? And these were both kind of asked by Death Smallcaps and Steven Universe, both on Tumblr.
Did I ever mention, I know I've told you, but I don't think I've ever mentioned on the podcast that one thing that I really enjoy about watching the Tumblr and stuff is everyone's usernames. They make me really happy. I'm like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, there's some quality usernames out there, so
congrats. Congrats to everyone, yes. So I can go first, I guess, answer first. So back in the day, probably around, there's a later question about when we met, probably around when we met, I started getting into anime. I was in like middle school. And I was mentioning to some people at school that I liked some anime. I don't remember what it was. I don't remember all the context of the conversation, but I remember who it was with. And this person suggested, she's like, well, if you like whatever, then you'll probably like this thing called Fruits Basket. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I just want to read everything right now and watch everything. And I remember that she also loaned me like a bootleg of the anime with like shitty subtitles. And I remember watching that a bit later. That was pretty great. But yeah, so that person recommended it, started reading it, got really into it. That was in, I don't know, like the early 2000s. So it probably been coming out for a couple of years. Probably just started getting released in North America. And I don't know, it was a great series. It was compelling. I think it was relatable in the time probably that we read it the first time too, because we were kind of in middle school, high school.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I'm almost certain I borrowed it from you.
That's probably true.
I can't remember if it was the anime or the manga first.
I don't know. It was so long ago.
yeah, it had to have been like 2002, 2003. So
something like that.
Yeah.
I remember I was definitely
the anime was out in the US, and I think the manga had like just started to come out.
Probably. As I said before, I got a bootleg version of it, so or like I borrowed a bootleg version of it first, which is really funny.
Yeah, I remember you making jokes about how like they called like Uon Hana fish and flour.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they called Kyo Cap for some reason. It was pretty great, so we make jokes about that sometimes. My sister and I watched it together, and we make jokes about that a lot. But it was a good time. This is what we had to deal with in the days before simulcast. So
yeah.
So that was a good time. And then this other part of this question was like, what did you guys think of it then? How have your feelings changed about it from what you remember the first time?
Yeah, well, I do think I saw it more of as more of a comedy back then, like when first starting it. Like it was like, oh, this is a cute, funny series to get into.
For sure. Well, the anime makes it seem like that too. The original anime.
But like as like it kind of got darker as we got older. Like it was kind of know just by the nature of when we got into it as it was coming out. So it kind of felt like a series that grew up with us, I think.
Yeah, kind of like Harry Potter or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I don't remember it. I don't know when the turning point was that I felt like it wasn't really a comedy, because it's so subtle. It gets into, even though you see like the stuff with Atori and like the second volume, I feel like it doesn't really hit you until later, especially the first time you read it. You're like, oh, this is fucking serious.
Yeah, because I feel like
especially because we were young too.
Yeah, that too. And I feel like when you first start out, those chapters seem like the anomalies. Like, oh, this is a serious chapter.
Yeah.
but then like the whole thing is pretty serious.
Yeah.
So,
Once you get to the beach arc, you're like, we're in it, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's true. I feel like I don't remember how strongly I felt about it then. I mean, I know I really enjoyed it, and I was super into it. By the time, like, I remember when there's a specific thing that happens. I can't say it because it's a spoiler, but I remember when some of the chapters actually were released, and by the time we were in high school, and like seeing them live and being like, I want to read this so badly, and I can't. I remember that. By then, I knew that it was serious.
Yeah, I remember I think I sort of fell away from it a little bit, like probably like when I caught up to the English release in like manga chapters. But I remember seeing like some stuff in scanlations. Like I remember seeing the scene in when they visit Shisho's house when they're standing by
hands touching,
like, the stain on the wall with their hands touching. Everyone's like, ooh,
hands.
Yeah, but I remember kind of like I wasn't really reading it at that time. I would see the occasional scanlation, and then like when it started to get toward the end, I was like, oh, this is getting real. I got to get back into this. So.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I guess changed is like probably the first time I read it, I was really more into the like romance rather than the psychological aspects of everything. I was a Kyoto shipper from the beginning, and as we can see now, the relationship is really developing. So I was like, oh my god, this is so great. I remember that feeling like that a lot. Which is probably also a byproduct of being in middle school, high school, but but then like I remember I've had these sitting on my bookcase forever. I think I brought, even when I went to like college and moved like a very small amount of my things, I was like, I still have to bring Furuba with me, just because, and some other manga too, but specifically Furuba. And I remember rereading parts of this later that touch. Every time I reread it, something touches me in a different way emotionally. I feel like this time the abuse is really getting to me out of all the things. That's actually like all the stuff that Kido does now that because like when you read it yourself, you can kind of like skim through and be like, yeah, that shit's happening, and you can like choose your own adventure when you read something almost.
Yeah.
And now that I feel like we really need to talk about these things. I feel like that's the thing that's touching me the most emotionally this time.
Yeah, and I think something that's definitely changed for me is going from reading it, like I said, it was like 2002, 2003, we were like young teenagers
kids
when we first started reading this, like younger than the main characters.
Yes.
And now we're adults, like we're like almost 30.
Yes.
Yeah. And like looking at it now, I'm like I think at the time it's like you just read these series, you're like, oh, these characters and they're going through stuff and they're like me and stuff. But now you're looking at it, you're like, these are children.
Yeah.
Like
yes.
Like these are young teenagers going through this shit with all these awful adults in their lives, and you're like, this is awful. Like,
I know. I mean, fortunately, we're in a situation where we haven't had to deal with those things in our lives, which says a lot about us, I think, and the kind of like privilege that we have, probably. But it's you look back and you're like, oh my god, like none of the things. That's why I feel like the familial abuse and stuff really touches me this time, because as a child I was like, oh, whatever, like this is just a story, you know.
But now you're looking back at it and you're like thinking of yourself at that age, and you're like, God, I would go if I had to go through that. Like,
how does Toru function without a mother? Like, we'll never know. Like, I don't know. It's crazy. And like, just being like, I just have to deal with this. I just have to like deal with this family. Her whole none of her family, like, it's crazy how her family doesn't give a shit about her to me. Like, anyway, but yeah, so I feel like every time, to answer your question directly, Steven Universe, I feel like every time different parts of the story, every time I read it, without fail, there's a different thing that stands out to me because of something that I've experienced in my life that now I connect with it more in a different way.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that changes the most. My opinion is still the same, which is that it's a great series, and I think you can connect with it in a lot of ways. But that's what's changed, for sure. On a deep note. All right.
Let's see. Next question from On Fire Geek on Tumblr says, for your mid-series recap, I'd love to see you guys talk about what surprised you about Fruits Basket, especially since you both had read it before.
All right. A similar question, but like not exactly the same.
Kinda
what changes?
Similar,
it's similar, but I think what surprised me this time the most, well, the abuse does surprise me, but like seeing Luigi get punched in the face last time, I was like, oh my god, I can't even.
Again, Child.
Child. Well, so, yeah, who punches a, like, 15-year-olds? It's
Yeah.
mind-blowing. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're saying that, like, that doesn't happen in real life, but it does.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sad. Unfortunately, it does happen all the time. It's depressing. But yeah, I think that some of that surprises me. I think, like, the scariness that Takaya is able to convey with the way that she draws Akito and Shigure, but especially Akito, is really impressive.
Yeah.
And, like, the emotion again, like, now that we're as we go through this, I have to report to you what happened every time, and we joke about it a lot about describing people's expressions, but it's very challenging. They're all very mixed and they're very real. Like, you know what the character's feeling, but it's so hard to verbalize sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that surprises me just because it's like you don't think about it. You experience it at an emotional level, not a logical level. And it's very impressive. I'm impressed by the way that Takaya is able to convey emotion.
Yeah. And you're talking about, like, the abuse surprising you. I think, like, I think what surprised me now is the kind of the realism of the abuse, because I think when you're reading it as a kid, you're just like, oh, this is, you know, awful things happening to fictional characters, but you know, but when you look at it now, you're like, this is, like, some of it is fairly realistic portrayal of the psychological effects of, like, physical and emotional abuse from you know, trusted family members and stuff like that. And so
for sure.
I think also kind of related to that, what surprised me, since I was saying I kind of fell off for a bit, so I kind of read it for a while, then sort of fell off for a bit, and then kind of finished it up. And, like, between then and now, I've kind of reread bits and pieces, but this is the first time I'm really reading it straight through again.
Yeah, same.
Like, all the way through. And so I've been kind of surprised by how much is set up how early on.
Yes.
And, like, including stuff like the family dynamics and the deeper, darker stuff that gets more deeply explored later on in the series. But it's all, a lot of it is set up really early on. And, like, I've been reading chapters and going like, oh, wow, this part gets mentioned all the way back here.
Yeah, I think we were talking about how the hat got mentioned at the very beginning of the story when I was listening to that first episode, and we were like, oh shit, like, you forget, like, you remember everything that happens, but forget every single little thing.
Like, you remember, like, oh, the hat reveal happened later on in the series, but you don't remember how much that was foreshadowed really early on and stuff.
I'm trying to know if there's other things that were surprising. I think also one thing that constantly surprises me is, like, Yuki's development, and that's partly because there's a question that's coming up about characters, like your favorites and whatever. But Yuki, as the first time I read it, Yuki wasn't really one of my favorites, so I didn't pay that much attention. I mean, I remember thinking, like, wow, he's really different than he used to be. Like, now I kind of like him the first time I read it, and really not liking him at the beginning. And now it's like, because we're tracking it so closely, I see him changing. I'm like, wow, good for you, Yuki. Like, even, like, you know, several chapters before I probably realized it the first time. I feel like I'm surprised by how much he changes so quickly as opposed to other characters.
Yeah, I think kind of the depth of various characters in general is another thing that's surprising when you, like, read it all at once, knowing where it's going and everything.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. So okay, on a related note, next question, which came from a couple of people. Again, like, a couple of people asked us. So, like, so Steven Universe also asked, what are your fave characters and who were your faves when you first read the series? Yeah, let's answer that first. So who are your fave characters now, and who were your faves when you first read the series?
I think right now it's kind of a three-way tie between Momiji, Ayame, and Kakeru.
Okay.
Those are kind of my favorites. Some of that I can't really talk about why.
That's okay.
But those are kind of my three favorites nowadays. With special mention also for Hattori and Yuki.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're not my faves, but I like them a lot.
Yes.
And that's very different from the first time I read it, where I'm pretty sure my favorite was Kyo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I still like Kyo a lot. He's still a very good character.
He's great.
I still enjoy him a lot. But yeah, that's definitely changed a lot. Like, the same as you, I didn't like Yuki very much when I first was reading the series. But he has just such tremendous growth across the series that I'm like, I remember the first time I was reading, like, the later chapters, I was like, I'm so proud of him. Like, it wasn't even really that I, like, liked him that much at the time. I was just like, wow, he's, like, grown so much and come so far. I'm kind of proud of him. But like, now, like, reading it back, like, even in those early days, like, knowing what his, like, inner turmoil is and where he's going and everything, I'm like, oh, Yuki. Like, even in the early chapters where I didn't care for him that much.
Yes. Yes. I agree with you. They're all good choices.
Yeah.
First of all, there's no characters in Furuba that are bad choices, really. Some people are like, I hate Akito, and some people are like, I love Akito. Like, yeah. good reasons for both. You're fine.
Yeah, I like Akito a lot too as a character.
Akito's a good character.
Yeah.
Not a good theoretical person, but a good character.
Same with Shigure. I like
Yeah.
Shigure a lot as a character also, but not a good person.
Yes. I enjoy Shigure's presence. He creeps me out. It's still kind of
Yeah.
There. I don't know. I can't say that I don't know that I enjoy reading their interactions for like the drama, but they still kind of freak me out. So it's fine. That's why we read things. This is for the experience of being freaked out, right?
Yeah. The point of art is to evoke emotion.
Yeah, and it's happening.
Yes.
I would say probably my favorite characters in the first pass was probably also Kyo. I always liked Kyo. And I like Machi. I liked Machi. I remember liking Machi in the beginning of the series. Or like reading it the first time. I'm trying to think of who else. Like basically them. And I think that I always liked Toru, but I think I like Toru even more now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, special shout out for Toru. I've always liked Toru. Like,
I've always liked Toru.
I think that's a common character that people didn't like.
Yeah, and I never understood why. She's
like more now, but yeah, I've always liked Toru.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna get rehashed again with the anime and stuff too.
Probably.
People are like, oh, she's so perfect and whatever, but she's not. Like we see it; it's happening now.
Yeah, even early on. Like I do think the first anime had some impact on that, but like because even in the early chapters in the manga, you can see Toru's like flaws and insecurities.
And I think there's characters that really pick up on that, like Kyo. I mean, so it gets exposed relatively early what her kind of like true nature really is. I mean, she is capable of feeling compassion for a lot of people and whatever, which I guess would be the main like the trait that underlies the complaint that she's so perfect or something. But yeah, I've always liked Toru, and she's one of my favorites still. I think I have a deeper appreciation for a lot more characters than I used to, like U and Hana. I always felt like they were kind of sidey characters, but I loved when we got to reread through their backstories. I thought it was a really interesting time in the series. I think Shisho's one of my favorite characters as well, because he's just such a... Also, I guess like the reason they're my favorites is because they're things that I kind of wish I feel like I had, and it's hard to be like them. Like someone who's so compassionate and caring that they can like take in another person or open themselves up to other people or be more whatever. And then Rin is one of my favorites for the opposite reason, because I feel like I identify with her like behavior and her struggles that are the opposite of those things, where it's like she doesn't want people to be close to her because she feels like people are better off without being close to her or whatever. So I liked Rin before, but I also feel like I identify with her strongly now. And yeah, also special shout out to Hattori. He's one of my favorites too. I wish there was more scenes with him. Yeah. And Mayuko too, another character who I like. Yeah. Who doesn't get a lot of attention, but yeah. I think that's a good summary of favorites without just going to being like, I like this person a little. Yeah. Yeah. Bouncing off of that question, have your impressions of any characters changed since the first time you read the series? How and why? That was Beautiful Physical Siren, who also has an A+ Tumblr name. And also, what character surprised you the most, which is also on Fire Geek. I think those kind of questions are related. So
yeah. I mean, I talked about it a little bit, but Yuki probably is the one that had the most change in opinion. Yeah. From like the first time I read it to nowadays. But I'd say my opinions on all of them kind of changed a little bit, just like having a deeper understanding of like who they are. Like I mentioned, like Ayame as being one of my favorites. I always liked him, but I think when the first time I read it, I was just like, oh, he's so funny. Yeah. And nowadays, like, he's still funny, but I think I really like, I admire the way he's like very aware of his own flaws, even if he can't always like manage them. Like, yeah. And things like that. Like, you just there's a deeper understanding of a lot of these characters that you get from reading this series all the way through. And like deeply thinking about it each time. Every 2 chapters or something, rather than just experiencing it. Yeah. Which character surprised you the most? Would it be cheating to say Akito?
You mean because of the abuse or because spoilers?
Lots of spoilers. But including stuff we just now like covered, like the whole God reveal and stuff. And yeah, I think just the transition from Akito just being like this all-powerful, untouchable figure of fear off to the side that kind of everyone was living in the shadow of, to like we're starting to see becoming more of a flawed and insecure character.
They're kind of like Toru, the inverse of Toru.
Yeah.
This hardened shell of fear and scariness.
But also for spoilers.
Yeah. I feel like we're gonna have to remember some of these for spoilers because I categorize them as non-spoilers.
Yeah.
Also, we can talk about who surprised you the most so far, but
yeah. But yeah, even I think just from early days of the series to like where we've gotten so far, I think that a lot surprised me about Akito.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to agree with you. So in terms of like, okay, so have your impressions of any characters changed since the first time you read the Red Fruits Basket, how and why, and also which characters surprised you the most? So yeah, like we talked about, I agree with you, Yuki. Wasn't the first time I read it, I was like not into it, and I didn't understand why people liked him. And then at some point I was like, he's great. I don't know why I never didn't like him, like why I never, didn't understand what he was doing in the story or whatever.
Yeah.
I think like in terms of impression, I feel like generally it's the same, but I feel like I empathize with a lot of characters more deeply. Like we talked about, like I wasn't a huge fan of Ayame. I mean, I also thought he was funny, but I feel like I empathize with his struggle a bit more as an adult, having made more mistakes and like maybe hurt more people and stuff than as a teenager. Feeling more empathetic about other people, I feel like I empathize with his struggle a bit more. And I also agree with you that Akito surprised me the most in terms of just how scary Akito is. Like there's something about the way I think Takai does a good job of making Akito be scary.
Yeah. And I think like despite all the like supernatural curse stuff, Akito's frightening in a very real way.
Yeah, for sure.
Like there are people like Akito in the world.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's anybody else who surprised me. I mean, like I feel like Haru, I remember him the same. Like in Momiji, Kisa, and Hiro, like their kind of stories I feel like are pretty straightforward. Oh, I think like not necessarily Momiji, but his story of his mother also really I feel like made an impression on me this time as well, especially when we saw it in the anime when she actually like, stabbed herself, which was crazy.
Yeah, I think that's the
and
thing.
Some of the
like,
parent stuff too.
Where like I always like Momiji, but now I like really like admire his fortitude and and his attitude in the face of everything and stuff. And,
yeah, he's a great character.
Like, just how he manages to stay such a like genuinely kind and loving person despite all the shit he's gone through.
Yeah, definitely.
And continues to go through.
Yes.
He just got punched in the face by Akito. So.
By someone who's supposed to love him more than anyone else. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Ugh, yeah.
So he just got punched in the face by God.
Yeah. Yes, it's true. Yeah, I think another character who's I also kind of surprised her impression changed a lot was Uo, because the first time I read this I was like, yeah, whatever, she was in a gang, whatever, like, and it was kind of just a peripheral thing in my enjoyment of the developing relationship between Kyo and Toru, but like this time we were like, shit, she's like 11 in a gang.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that's
like,
another
what the
children
fuck?
thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So that was a little crazy to me this time.
Yeah. I also just thought of, we haven't gotten into it in the series, so I can't talk too much about it, but I think Kyoko surprised me a lot too.
Yeah.
Getting more into her as a character and her backstory, like compared to just the, the knowledge drops early on.
Yeah, you're right. Kyoko's a really interesting character.
Yeah.
That was one, I can't say this time that changed for me, but definitely reading about her story again as an adult changed that for me. Yeah, for sure. All right. Next question. You're up.
Alrighty. It's another one from On Fire Geek. It says, how does Furuba hold up in a 2019 world since it was written in the late 90s and early 2000s?
Yeah.
And then I guess I'll start with that one and then I'll add in the next one.
Yeah, I don't know if that's related. Anyway, yeah, there's yes, On Fire Geek sent us a couple questions. They were kind of like combined. So I split them because I thought they could be conceptually separated. Anyway, it's fine. But so yes, how does Furuba hold up in a 2018 world? I think that basically all the themes from Furuba are just a constant themes of humanity, and like they'll always be relevant. There's like minor, we talked about like some, like the portrayal of characters like Ritsu, and we talked about how there's one criticism of Fruits Basket is that it has all these like wonderful and amazing relationships, no homosexual ones, like no everybody ends up in these kind of like I don't know, we haven't seen anybody end up in any kind of like relationships that are not just straight up heterosexual relationships.
Yeah.
And that's a critique that's valid. There's no I don't know. Yeah, there's very little like diversity in certain senses in the story, but I think that the themes and the ideas that are communicated are still going to be, they're as relevant as they were in the 90s, and they're going to be relevant 20 years from now.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of my feeling about the series.
Yeah, I think the storytelling, the themes, the emotional beats, those all hit as hard as they did the first time. Like, are, you know, still pretty pitch perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's more just kind of a couple of little details have changed, and I think we've even seen a little like tweaking to the new anime compared.
Yeah, we did.
Like with the couple changes to like the Ritsu stuff in the new anime compared to the manga, and I don't think it was like offensive.
No.
It was just of its time.
Yeah.
Like I think for the 90s, it was a fairly, you know, sympathetic and, you know, forward-thinking portrayal of someone like Ritsu. I'm trying to think of how to word.
Yeah, someone who cross-dresses. Like Ritsu
is someone with a like more complex gender identity.
Yes.
Was commonly portrayed at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like I think of other shows, like things from the 90s, and like take like Friends. Like if you ever watched Friends, again, and I don't even know, probably half our audience has never seen Friends except for reruns, but there's a lot of like gay jokes and just really really off-color jokes. It's like you don't have this never had to be funny, like, and it's that kind of stuff is really upsetting, and I don't think we see that. I do think like there was a little bit of harsh treatment of Ritsu, for example, but
but
not,
like he's still,
I don't know,
he's still treated as a likable, sympathetic character.
Yes.
Whose, you know, plight you're meant to feel for, and it's not. And like his cross-dressing and stuff isn't really treated as like the core of his issues. It's his own insecurity. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
And but I do think some of the changes that were made in the new anime that made it less of a you cross-dress because you're insecure and more of it, and you'll stop cross-dressing once you're over it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that was good.
You know, it was a good change to de-emphasize that part of it.
I agree with you. So it's kind of that's my opinion about that.
Yeah.
I guess following up, so this was all part of the same question, but I did split them. So following up on that, on Fire Geek also asked, I assume that you would recommend people read Furuba. Are there any caveats or things to keep in mind that you would suggest before complete newbies dive in?
I mean, I guess I would just suggest people be aware of the themes of the story. Like, it touches on a lot of dark stuff.
Yes.
And so, like, you need to be aware of like what you're getting into if you can handle that kind of stuff. And, you know, at the time, because
it's dark.
Yeah, I mean, there's yeah. I mean, I don't have any kind of like PTSD or anything I would call like an actual trigger, but even for me, there's like some days where I'm like, I'm not up to reading this.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
this is from a time before trigger warnings, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good caveat. Yeah, there's dark stuff in there, and we talked about that at the beginning. That's something that I was hoping, because like we talked about before, how the original anime, especially people who watch the original anime, were like, I love how charming and funny these like people transforming into animals is, and it's great.
Yeah. But yeah, there's lots of there's lots of themes of abuse. There's themes of like suicide and things like that, and I think they're all handled pretty well, pretty sensitively. But you know, just kind of be aware of what the series entails.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's the same as any other thing. Like, read with caution. If something like bothers you, don't read it. That's how it goes. But like, I don't recommend the series to people. I recommended the series to people who are like, I like dark things. I'm like, well, you should read this series about people that transform into animals, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's definitely things. There's people who have been at like a point in their life where like wouldn't recommend it to someone because of certain things, right? So yeah, and I think things to keep in mind are like, it's not about. This isn't a story about people turning into animals. This is a story about people who are purposefully isolated and sheltered from society on purpose, and how that has psychologically affected them and their ability to, you know, be fully self-actualized. Like, that's what the story is about. So if you're down with that, you should read it.
Yeah, it's an extremely psychological story. It's not just a supernatural, fun little romp or anything.
I think all like character focused stories are like that's how it is. So if you like that kind of thing, then yes. I think the thing to keep in mind, other than like, so there's some contextual things from the like 90s or early 2000s or whatever, but
another thing to keep in mind, it was written in the late 90s, early 2000s, so
So things are going to end up a certain way. But like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the caveat is just approach it with an open mind and like the thing that you're looking for when you read any story is like, what is the message? Not like what is the, the thing that's happening, the like the explicit things that are happening. Like, what is this story? And I think like there's a lot of great messages to be learned from Fruits Basket. I think that is a great thing.
I think it's a very positive series overall.
I'm glad that I read it as a, teen because I feel like it gave me a perspective on life that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't read it, actually.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, like there's lots of like darkness and themes of abuse and everything, but there's a lot of themes of recovery and forgiveness and moving forward
and deciding if you're going to be forgiving people or not.
Yeah.
And how you're going to live being in control of your own life and how important that is.
Yeah, and there being like a future after abuse and everything.
Yes. So in that case, yes, the caveat is it's a great series. You should read it, but it is dark, I guess.
Yeah. As with everything, do your research.
Yeah, read an article. Ask someone who read it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so On Fire Geek also asked favorite motif from the series.
Feathers.
Yes, a good one. I mean, is motif like a thing or like a small thing or like a theme?
Isn't motif technically a musical term? I don't know.
I guess so. If I had to pick, if feathers are truly your answer, I would say The Very Foolish Traveler is mine. Because it's recurrent multiple times in the series. We talked about even so far, and it highlights, I think, an important theme, which is, and it exemplifies multiple themes. One of them is like, that other people are going to have a different perspective than you and things they value are going to be different, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's the theme, a message of the series, perhaps. And then also it's constantly used as this, like, what's important to you? Like this reference, like, kind of, I don't know, Kyo thinks of it, we just saw when he kind of admits it to himself, his feelings for Toru and stuff like that. And
yeah.
So I think that's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if we stretch motif to mean like little theme or whatever also, I think my favorite is the idea of hurting and getting hurt by people by living out in the world as a human being. Like,
yeah. It's a good one.
Yeah, like, that's stated explicitly that first time with Shigure and Kyo, but I think it comes back time and again. And I think it's like, it's an important thing to know as like, a human being living in this world. Like, you're going to hurt people, you're going to get hurt by people, that's going to change you and change them, and that's just how living works.
Yes. It's a great kernel of an idea. Takaya's got some really interesting ideas in the series.
Yeah, I think it's especially, we were talking about like you're glad you read it as a teen. I think that's especially a good thing to know as a teenager, because that's like when you're just starting to, like realize you're not the center of the world.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, maybe other people have different experiences than me. Just maybe.
Yeah, possibly.
And you might need to be sensitive to them.
Yeah.
I feel like a character like Toru teaches us how to be, like, even when you have your own insecurities or things that you don't want people to know about you, it's still important to try to make space and extend yourself to other people. I don't know. Yeah. Agree with you. Both good motifs and or themes. And or ideas.
But also
do
feathers.
We know? Yeah, feathers. Do we know what we're talking about? We'll never know. Okay.
Like music nerds don't add us.
I think you're right. Okay. Anime questions now. Moving on to anime questions. I think it's technically your turn.
Yeah. Another one from Steven Universe. What are you most looking forward to seeing animated in the rest of the anime?
Rin. I could say without a doubt.
Yeah.
Although I think some of the beach scenes are going to be quite exciting since we saw all the beach stuff in the anime. It's going to be good.
Yeah. I'm excited to see like student council stuff. I think that'll be
your favorite.
Yeah, that has some of my favorite like funny scenes. Some of my favorite like dramatic scenes are all like student council stuff. So I'm excited to see that. I was really excited to get the little sneak preview of Kakeru Machi at the end of the final episode of the first season.
I think we've seen. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I say also just a lot of like stuff from the end of the series, like just big dramatic emotional payoffs for stuff. I'm excited to see that. I've already cried over it in still image form, so I'm excited to see how much more I
time to cry again.
When it's animated.
Can't wait to feel my heart in my mouth later. It's gonna be a good time. I was just gonna say we've seen a lot of really touching scenes so far, but for me the most touching ones are probably yet to come. So I'm excited to see that too. can say with confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna be good. Okay, so we have an interesting question from this is from a Twitter ask from My Anime Podcast at My Anime Podcast. So I don't know which. There's two hosts of this podcast. They also run an anime podcast. It's good. I listened to a couple of episodes, but they talk about a lot of anime that I haven't watched, like newer series. So it's like cool, interesting. So I don't know which host it was, if it was the other Taka, but the question asked was, if you could expand one mini arc from the series into a full-blown manga or anime, what would it be? And they suggested personally to go with Uotani's backstory, which is a good one.
Mm-hmm. I don't know about a specific arc, but there's a lot of characters that we only get a little bit of that I would enjoy seeing more of. Like, we talked about Ritsu. We don't see very much of Ritsu. I'd enjoy seeing more of him. I always enjoy seeing more of Momiji. He's a more major character, but he's still a fairly secondary character.
Yeah. Secondary major character.
Yeah, and I think he's got a lot of, like, interesting stuff going on in his own life that doesn't intersect with the main plot that much. Yeah. That would be interesting to see.
So one thing that I think would be interesting to see is, so we've seen some flashbacks of like Shigure and Hattori and Ayame as children. And actually I think it would be interesting to kind of see like those things animated. There's some stuff specifically that I can't mention yet that hasn't happened in the manga yet. That's spoilery, but like some of the things from before, like not just before the series starts, but in the years before, you know, Toru was even in the picture, be interesting to see those things kind of animated out. I wouldn't mind that. There's like, I guess, like the arcs while the Shigure and Hattori and Ayame are young, specifically. At kind of the beginning of the cycle of the Zodiac that's happening right now. I think that would be really interesting to see as an anime or a manga or whatever. Yeah,
that reminded me. I'd also be interested in seeing
more about
previous iterations of the Zodiac. Like, like they talk about how like this is the first time in a long time they've all been in existence at the same time. Like all the spirits have been possessing someone. So I'd be interested in like the last time that happened, or like the years in between when like only a few are around. Like, what happens when there's like Zodiac but no god, and
or like what was the previous god like? Like is it always like, I think Aikido, we haven't really seen Aikido's motivation for why Aikido wants everything to be the same. Was like, is that just a thing? Like, is that, you know, they talk about how like, oh, Kyo, you hate water because the cat spirit hated the water. Is it like the person possessed, or like the kind of god figure? Do they always feel like that? Like, is that part of the deal, or is it just Aikido? That'd be interesting to see.
Has it always been this like toxic and awful, or
I don't know. Speaking of characters, it would be interesting to see more about Shigure too, because we see so little of him. I think it'd be interesting. That backstory that I mentioned might reveal some of that, but
it'd be fun to see like a day in the life of Shigure, where you actually see what the hell he's thinking.
It's just him sitting there like figuring out ways to torture Michan and like. But it'd be interesting to see what his actual motivation is. We don't know. It's very obfuscated right now. So
this one I think we're gonna struggle with, because we talked about how we haven't watched very many.
I have some thoughts.
Anime in recent years, but it says
they're all gonna be old characters. It's fine.
Yeah, also from the My Anime Podcast people, it says recast the entire Soma clan using characters from other anime and manga.
It's gonna get also like there'll be some that I've watched that you haven't. It's gonna be a good time. Let me I'll start with my list that I started a couple weeks ago and forgot. So here we go. So I maybe recast. Also, I think this is an interesting question. I guess it's like, so recast them using their base like characteristics as they relate to characters from other series, probably. Oh, so yes, My Anime Podcast provided a few thoughts. So Hattori and Ayame as Kyoya and Tamaki from Ouran High School Host Club, agree. And then Honey Senpai, of course, could be Momiji. Ritsu.
Had the same voice actor for the original animes.
I mean, good choices. Ritsu as Kuranosuke from Princess Jellyfish, which I haven't seen, but that's fine. That's good.
I've heard of it.
Yes, I've also heard of it. It's a popular series. So I have Toru as Nanami from Kami-sama Hajime Mashita, which I don't think you've seen. But I think they're quite similar. Yuki as Watanuki from Exaholic, maybe? Maybe this is the first one you could relate to. For Kyo, I had Ed from Fullmetal Alchemist. Maybe mostly because of the anger and the caring about people. I don't know.
Yeah.
For Momiji, I had Ed from Cowboy Bebop. Have you ever seen Mushishi?
No, I want to, though. It looks gorgeous.
Oh, it's really good. Oh, let's start a podcast about it. Then we'll watch it. It's wonderful. I think that for people who've seen Mushishi, I think that Hattori could be recast as like or the main guy Ginko could be recast as like Hattori. You'll see when you watch it. It's great. For Haru, I had Miroku from Inuyasha. For Yame, I had Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. I think they have similar bombastic personalities. Oh, for Rin, I had Kikyo from Inuyasha. For Ua, I had Faye from Cowboy Bebop, or somebody like Sango from Inuyasha. See, I feel like this question is going to reveal more, like, it's just about the anime that we've watched secretly. For Hana, I had Saki from Azumanga Daioh.
Oh.
The tall one who likes cats. The quiet one.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's another character that's really like Hana, but... you know. For Hero, I have Chihiro from Spirited Away. She's kind of annoying and then grows through the story. Did I miss people? Those are all my thoughts so far.
Well, I'm impressed because I got nothing.
Okay, great. I thought really long and hard about this question. It's very challenging. Who else is on here? I think Ayame and Hal from House Moving Castle is pretty good.
Yeah.
I really struggled with like Kisa. The problem with Kisa is like she makes her kind of like debut in that series, that part, and then she's constantly around being friends with Toru and like being nice and sweet, but doesn't have a lot of other like, at least what we've seen so far, doesn't have a lot of other like development that happens. So it's like, is your defining characteristic like, I don't know, being kind of quiet and quietly courageous? Like, it's kind of tricky. Oh, Kagura. I have Kagura. For Kagura, I listed Kagome from Inuyasha. But I don't know. She's just kind of bold and, like, will do whatever, right?
Yeah.
But has a good heart deep down. For Ritsu, I put Jakin from Inuyasha. Is that acceptable? He kind of freaks out about everything. It's hard to just, like, not pick just, like, superficial things. I think a lot of these characters are, like, very deep, and it's difficult to say, like, based on this kind of whatever we're seeing as, like, defining characteristics, personality-wise. Oh, I didn't pick Shigure. For Shigure, I didn't say Shigure. I wrote Tomoe from Kami-sama Hajime Mashite, which you also haven't seen. But he's kind of a trickster type. I didn't make anybody for Akito.
Yeah, Akito's kind of challenging.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Somebody whose motivation is to just keep things exactly the same as they are. Like, most characters aren't motivated by that kind of thing because that doesn't move a plot along, I guess.
Yeah.
Someone who's very reticent. Anyway, that was my list. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it just revealed how few characters I've read in anime that I've watched, or manga that I've read in anime that I've watched. But
yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it because I really got nothing.
All right, great.
I tried to think of some in the last couple minutes, but I really
it's hard. It took me a long time. That was like 2 subway rides worth of thinking about it. It's like 2 commutes worth of trying to decide who could you recast from other things. I don't know. It's a little challenging, but I feel like I've come up with a list for most people.
Yeah,
so.
I'm impressed. I'm deeply impressed.
Do you agree with any of my weird suggestions?
Yeah, no, they sounded good. The ones I knew, anyway.
The ones that you knew. Okay, well, first of all, so you have to watch Mushishi, and then you have to watch Kami-sama Hajime Mashita.
Yeah.
Podcast starting soon for both of those. No, I'm just
I was gonna say, I think those are the 2 main ones that I'm not familiar with. So.
Yeah, I tried to pick ones you're also familiar with, but also we've seen mostly the same things, so I figured it would be okay. But
yeah,
they're both great. You should watch them or read them. Okay.
Yeah, they seem appealing to me. I just haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, it's the story with everything, I feel like.
There's so many things to watch and read and play.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I know. and do. Yeah. Okay.
It's like, plus, life.
Yeah, plus, you're feeding yourself and doing your laundry on a regular basis, etc. Working on the daily.
Going to work, earning money so that you can continue to feed yourself and do your laundry.
And also buy your games and buy your media that you want to watch. Host your podcast, for example. Yeah. Okay.
Next questions. All right. We're getting into personal zone now.
Yeah, this is all we're in the about us questions. So if you don't care about us, you can just like skip ahead of it.
It's kind of the same question, both from Decimal Caps on Tumblr and Alice with a Y through email.
And also her friend Shelby, I think, was included in those questions. They both sent us messages before, which are very sweet. But yes. Yeah.
Which is, how did you guys meet? / how did you guys meet, become friends? And this one had the nice addition that they find our banter fun. So.
Yes, thank you. Oh, I might have cut out some of the other compliments from other messages of these. But... It's okay. We enjoy the banter too. Yeah, it's not too personal to say, I don't think.
Yeah.
We met in middle school.
Yeah. We were in the same Girl Scout troop.
Yeah, we were in the same Girl Scout troop. My first memory of you, just to add some color to the story, was that we were playing, what's that game called? It was one of those improv games. The party game? Yeah, Party Quirks. Yeah, you know.
Ripped straight from, what do you call it? Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Whose Line. This was a time period in our lives where, for some reason, we were all very into Whose Line. This was like if you've never seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, of course, it's a hilarious show from the, I don't know, 2000s or late 90s probably too. It was in like reruns when we were watching it. But the game it's an improv game where you're given a quirk and people have to guess what your party quirk is. And Kayla's party quirk was being, what was it?
It's like a soldier with PTSD or something.
PTSD, which we're laughing about it now, but it was she was like dropping to the floor and being like the bombs and stuff. It was really funny. It was a good time. So that was how we met. My very first memory of Kayla. And then of course we went to the same middle school and we became friends, and then we started hanging out talking about manga and stuff. So
to go off that first memory, that is at the time was very out of character for me. I was super shy at that age. But I was like at that first Girl Scout troop meeting, and I was like, I really, really like these people. I really want to be friends with them.
Oh,
so like I like
nice.
So I like gathered up all my courage to like be silly and stuff. So
well, you did a good job. It clearly made an impression.
Yeah.
Like, so long later. How long has it been? Like 15 years. More than 15 years later.
More than 15, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been friends for a long ass time, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we went to middle school for a while. We went to high school together for briefly, and then Kayla moved away, sadly. But we had the internet to keep us together.
Yeah,
so.
Thanks to the wonders of the internet.
Yeah, and we don't live in the same place now. We record this remotely. Yeah, and so we've been friends for a long time. And now we have podcasts together about anime, so it's a good time. Yay.
Just something we sort of like wanted to do for a long time.
Yes.
In some form or another.
At least a year. We couldn't start because I started teaching part-time, which was a mistake I feel like in my life. I mean, it's a good experience, but it's a lot
I feel like
of time.
even before like podcasting was a big thing, we were like, we should do something.
Yeah, we always had plans
like this,
for creative endeavors that never really came through. Like for one time we were going to write a novel in letters, and one time we were going to I found that list. I can't remember where it is, but I found a list of all these things we were going to do together. We had like some stories that we thought about doing and stuff. But this is how the creative
it was a
endeavor
list of like
up.
serious things. And then it also had like open a novelty condom shop or something.
Yeah, I think so. I wish I could find it right now. It was so good.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I sent you a message. Hold on, wait. I think I can find it. This is the content that people want, right?
Yes.
Here's the list. I sent Kayla a message in 2010. I found this random text file on my computer just now that has our quote unquote list of things to do someday list. And the list says stuff for Kay and I to do someday. Start a good dubbing subbing publishing company. Write a collab fanfic. Kay marries a guy named Chad and I marry a guy 8 years older than me. This is related to partly to Furuba. It says write or draw Delicious, which is a story that we came up with, which is a parody of like manga and anime about making food, like Yakitate Japan.
Yeah, it's a parody of like Mysterious Shop manga.
Which is I still think about it on the regular, for the record. Yeah. So anyway,
some of those jokes were A++. I don't know about the whole thing overall, but some of them still
were great. Yeah, it's good. Maybe we can do that someday. Write that letter novel, which is what I just mentioned. Write a reverse gender role type story, which I think means that we were talking about how often when you have like a group of characters in this story, there's like a bunch of dudes and one girl, and we were like, it should be a bunch of girls and one dude in the group. Write an average person romance novel. Open a novelty condom shop. Write, draw a webcomic. Become Canadian pop stars. I'm partway there. I don't know about you. What are you doing to live up to this? Says Viva la Vivo-M in New York, London, or Toronto. Also partway there. See Spring Awakening and sit on the stage. Haven't done that yet. Have you ever sat on the stage? This is important.
I've seen it, but I have not sat on the stage.
I haven't sat on the stage either. Have a treehouse. Have a ball pit. Have a secret passageway to the ball pit. So you haven't read this list in a long time?
Just the slight pause between to the ball pit.
There's a ... Has to be read that way. The next thing is split a Cinnabon. We could still do that.
Yeah.
write a musical, super Christmas decorate our apartment someday, make awesome cookies at Christmas, go to San Diego Comic-Con, and have a naked pool party. Also, it says, in this note I sent you, it says there's after a few random line breaks, it says dazzle frequently. So I don't know if that's part of the list or not, but we should probably put it on the list. And it says, I just want to send this to you. Happy Slapsgiving. So it was pretty great. So anyway, yeah, we've been friends for a long time. That's just, I think this just encapsulates our experience. But yes, we always had ideas of having a creative endeavor together, and this is the one that we made a reality. So anyway, that's enough about us. Well, actually, it's not enough about us because there are other questions. The next question. So Tree Tunnels on Tumblr asked, what shiny zodiac animal are you guys? And also Beautiful Physical Siren asked, what zodiac do you think fits your personality best and why? So I don't know if that's different. But
well, I believe we were both Year of the Horse.
Yeah, we are. Our birthday's like a month apart. So.
Yeah.
We're situated comfortably within the Year of the Horse.
Yes. And honestly, I have no answer for what fits the personality the best. I went through a list of them all and read them, and I'm I still don't have a good idea of what fits. So
I think I guess horse probably fits the best.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
I feel like there's some that are the funny thing is people are oh, the horse is all super fiery and whatever, and I don't know. I feel I guess we both are could be kind of grumps and could be kind of reticent, which I think is a horse trait, but yeah, I don't know.
I feel from the thing I read, rat kind of fit me.
Yeah. But... yeah, you're witty and whatever. It says kind of a go-getter type. Very, very intelligent. I could see that fitting.
Thank you.
Yes. I think it's a compliment. People who are seeing rats are supposed to be very that's very desirable, I hear. That's why people say that Yuki's so great, right?
Yeah. He's so great. Gets locked up.
Yeah, the favorite gets locked up. That's how it works.
But yeah, I'm bad at fitting these kind of zodiac traits onto people, so
I looked at it and I was pretty sure horse is okay, but I want to see the other ones.
I think I still have the way back in the day Beanie Babies made a zodiac series, and I think I still have my horse zodiac Beanie Baby. Nice. Has shiny hooves.
Ooh, this says the personality traits. This one random website that I'm looking at says rat, quick-witted, smart, charming, and persuasive. This is why I think I agree that you could be a rat. Ox, patient, kind, stubborn, and conservative. I bet I could probably be an ox. That seems kind of like me. Tigers, authoritative, emotional, courageous, and intense. I'm not very patient either. I take back what I said. Kind, stubborn, and conservative could be me, though. Stubborn for sure. Rabbit, popular, compassionate, and sincere. Absolutely not. Feel like I'm none of those things. Dragon, energetic, fearless, warm-hearted, and charismatic. Snake, charming, gregarious, introverted, generous, and smart. I think I could probably be a snake.
Yeah, that sounds like you could.
Maybe not gregarious. Introverted, generous, and smart. I feel like I can be generous. Charming, maybe. I'm so charming, right? I mean, yeah. Horse, energetic, independent, impatient, and enjoy traveling. Definitely all those things. Not energetic, but independent, impatient, and enjoy traveling, getting around.
I have my energetic moments, but
I think be.
I think that fits both of us. Okay.
I think so. Sheep, mild-mannered, shy, kind, peace-loving. Absolutely not. Not mild-mannered at all. Monkey, fun, energetic, and active. Not really. Rooster, independent, practical, hardworking, and observant. Dog, patient, diligent, generous, faithful, kind. Not at all. None of those things. I mean, I think I could be generous, but and probably faithful, but I don't know. Kind is kind of going too far. I feel like I can be nice. Kind is a lot to say. Such a negative opinion of myself, but whatever. It's fine. Pig, loving, tolerant, honest, appreciative of luxury.
Appreciative of
tolerant.
Luxury.
Yeah, I don't know, whatever. Do you think Cogger is appreciative of luxury?
Probably.
Yeah. Anyway, I feel as far as I can tell, either it's conditioning or whatever, but I feel like the horse probably represents me pretty well.
Yeah.
As much as any of these things can.
Yeah, I mean they're all meant to be vague so that you can, anyone can go yeah, that's me. So
yeah, I suppose. You know what? The zodiac horoscopes are fun. That's all I have to say about that.
Yeah, they're fun because you can read any of them and go it's so me.
So the next question.
Okay, so the next one from Death Small Caps. The slight crucial difference is Who would you be in the Zodiac if you could be?
A good question. I'm gonna take this approach from the answer of like, if you could turn into a zodiac animal, who would you be?
Yeah.
And I think that I would really want to be. I love sea creatures. I would want to be Hattori, turn into a seahorse. I guess that could be impractical, but I think it would be interesting to be a seahorse. Is that weird?
That's a good approach, because my thought was none of them. They all have horrible lives. But
you're right. You're not wrong about that.
The perspective of changing into animals. Mild spoilers, but Crano actually turns into a small bird, and I would enjoy being a bird, I think.
Yes, that's cool.
Not a rooster. I mean, I guess being a rooster would be pretty cool. Like, you just kind of strut around and get fed and scream.
Sounds like a great life.
And nobody really messes with you because you're terrifying. So
yeah, basically, yeah. You're not wrong. But yeah,
kick people with the spurs on your feet.
Yes, as it was just said that Kureno is the rooster, but yeah, his like form is, I don't know, it's a minor spoiler, but the form is more like a small bird.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel comfortable leaving that in, not cutting it. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah. It's okay. We just learned that he's the bird. So yeah, and that, I don't know. I guess second choice would be maybe like Rin. Maybe you could run places really fast. Except, I mean, she has terrible health. I don't know if that comes with being a horse or just being her, but
yeah, horses are pretty delicate for being, huge monsters.
Creatures.
Essentially.
Monsters. They are kind of monsters. I agree with you. Majestic and monstrous.
Yes.
Next question, I guess. So, how did you get? So this is from Tree Tunnels on Tumblr. How did you get so good at Japanese? It seems like the way you talk about it, one of or both of you live there. Is it difficult to learn?
This is more of a question for you, because I'm not good at Japanese.
I was gonna say, I guess I'll take this one. Yes, I mean, you know some words. Yeah, doesn't make you good at Japanese though.
No,
and neither of us have lived there.
No, but we did visit there.
We have been there.
Yes.
I'll be going there in like several weeks. That's why we need to record this podcast so early. So I'll be back in the land of Furuba. It's gonna be great. First of all, I'm gonna take this as a compliment because I don't feel like I'm that good at Japanese, but I guess like we've had a couple of discussions of certain things in this series so far. So to answer your question, like I don't know. I always wanted to take Japanese, and a few years ago, after going through school where I didn't really have an opportunity to do that, and then starting to work professionally, I was like, I should really do that. I've always been interested in taking Japanese, so I started taking a class. So I've been studying for like, I don't know, 2.5 years or something like that. And I would say we've never lived there, so no experience. I've had conversations with people in Japan in Japanese, but not extensively. And then I think it's not difficult to learn, and the reason I feel like, okay, so like there's objective, if you want to look at learning languages, there is like objective difficulty in learning different languages, like depending on how close it is to the language that you speak natively or whatever, and how much time you can put into it. But I think that Japanese is not a hard language to learn, and the reason I think that is because there are a lot of resources that are available to you to learn. So another like random fun fact about me is that I took Cantonese for a year or two, because my husband's family is from southern China, and the class was good, but it was extremely difficult to do any kind of learning outside of class because it's very hard to find resources for Cantonese. And that's just the way that it is, I guess. There's reasons for that. But for Japanese, you have a lot of resources available to you, other than like if you take a class or you choose to learn by yourself. There are some really great ones. I can make some recommendations, I guess, if people are interested. Someone can write another ask and I can follow up. I don't want to go on forever. I could rant about this for a long time, but I think that if you really want to learn, you should definitely learn, because I found, even when we started doing this podcast, there's things that I learned about Japanese and about things in Fruits Basket that I would have known if I hadn't learned Japanese. Like we talked about, the thing that I feel most proud of is that we talked about Omiji's dialogue a lot, and I was like, why does he use certain words and say things a certain way? And I was like, oh, it's probably because he's like German, and because he speaks, it's meant to represent that he speaks in a certain way. And then later, like 2 days after that, the Funimation team released a thing about why they chose to have him have a German accent, and they said that it was because of that. And I was like, wow, I'm so proud of myself for understanding that. It was a really great feeling. So if you want to learn Japanese, I highly recommend that you do it. I'm not saying that like learning any language is easy, but it's easier than maybe others because you have access to a lot of resources. you can, like, if you don't understand something your teacher says, you can, like, look up the same thing and see it explained in, like, 3 different ways, and that way might help you understand better. There's a lot of tools you can use. There's a lot of people, like, you can go to Reddit and go to the, like, Japanese language subreddit and ask people questions. Like, you can talk to people through, like, italki. You don't have to go to a class if you're in a place where you can't get a class, or, like, if that, you need to figure out what works for you. Like, I like to take classes, so it works for me, but yeah. Anyway, I highly encourage anybody to do anything they want to do. You should definitely do it.
Yeah. And I will add, as someone with much spottier Japanese knowledge, visiting Japan is both, if you're in the more touristy areas, very easy to navigate.
It's very easy.
Even with spotty Japanese. And even in the slightly less touristy areas, it's amazingly easy to still communicate with someone. Like, yeah. I remember we had, me and your sister, we went to...
It's a great story.
We went to a little more rural part, like a little away from the more touristy city part, and we were at a train station, and we're trying to figure out if the next train was the right one to get on, based on our combined spotty knowledge. And some older Japanese ladies realized we were struggling, and we kind of communicated that we were trying to go in this direction, and is this the train? And they like made broad hand gestures that no, not this train. And then, like, when the next train came in, communicated that this train, and we thanked them with, like, overly polite language, and they were like, "Oh, you're too much." Like, so
this was hysterical, and they related the story to me later. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so it was a very, it's a fun interaction, and just shows, like, people are people all around the world, and
yeah, definitely. Yeah, yes. On that note, unrelated to this question, if you ever wanted to travel internationally and you're scared that you won't be able to communicate or whatever, like, don't be, because honestly, you can get by with, like, pointing and smiling and being a polite person in most places. Like, people are going to be nice to you if you're polite to them. And in Japan too. You don't, and yeah, there's, like, in all the major metropolitan cities, there's, like, English signage and stuff, like, you can get by. You don't need to. If you're willing to eat a random onigiri, you can visit Japan just fine. If you're not picky and stuff, and you can get English menus for everything. That's crazy anyway. But
and almost everything has pictures or, like, models of the food, so it's very easy to get something close to what you want, as long as you don't have strict food allergies, which
someone in our group, my sister does, and so we had to be very careful. But it was fine. I mean,
even that was
fine.
doable.
She's still alive.
Yeah. Yes. Alive.
Yeah. Nobody had to go to the hospital while we were in Japan. It was a great time. That's I feel like the hallmark of a successful international trip. So if you're interested in anime and manga and you're interested in learning Japanese, I highly recommend that you try. Like, it's you're getting closer and closer to understanding, the true, like, source material. I think that there's something interesting in that. This translation is really interesting too, but
language is fascinating, and, like, you're never gonna... No translation is gonna be perfect, so it's always interesting to see the original and see how things are translated and stuff, so...
Yeah. And just, if you're into Japanese culture, then it's nice to know. And it's... I don't know. I can't say it's gonna be easy for you, or it's different. Learning language is different for everybody. For me, I think it's, like, relatively... I don't know, easy. I feel like I'm interested in it and it's easy for me, but I have a friend who also just started learning Japanese. After I started taking classes, almost all our friend group started taking Japanese as well. And one of them recently was like, I don't get it, Japanese is so hard. And it's just like, well, maybe it is for you, but... Yeah.
I've been thinking about learning more, but I don't know if I want to take classes or...
You can learn, I can recommend a good resource, not sponsored, for learning on your own, which is Tofugu. Like tofu and fugu combined together. Yeah. They have a bunch of resources for learning Japanese on your own. That's kind of like their whole deal, is creating resources for people who want to learn by themselves. And they have an app that I like for learning kanji, so highly recommend that. Even if you're in a class, it's like a good supplement to class. And you can also get tutoring through italki, which is, like, relatively inexpensive. So if you want to, like, a one-on-one situation, you can look for that too. Also not sponsored. None of these things are sponsored. But yeah, it's great. You should... I don't know. I think learning a language is important. Learning languages is important because it gives you a different perspective on life. Yeah. And I think the one thing that I'll say before moving on to a different topic is, if you want to learn Japanese, or you want to learn another language, or you want to learn anything, I think you need to figure out... It's hard, but you need to figure out what works best for you. So you need to understand what kind of studying works best for you if you want to learn by yourself or in a course. And also, you need to remember that you're not learning English anymore, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I think a lot of people, especially at the beginning of their study, they want to kind of like equate everything one-to-one with English, and you have to accept that like in different languages there are things that just aren't going to be equivalent, or like things that you'll feel like quote unquote don't make sense to you from your perspective of speaking English or understanding English grammar, and you just have to accept that like in another language that's how things are structured, and words can mean two different things or be pronounced three different ways or whatever. Like, kanji is not phonetic. People don't really connect that like English letters are a representation of phonetic sound. So anyway, that's my rant about that, and I'll stop. But I highly recommend it. I highly recommend pursuing anything you want to pursue to learn. I think it's really important to keep learning in your life and trying new things.
Yeah.
All right, that's all I have to say about that. Also, I feel so complimented on my Japanese, even though it's a very, very like low level.
Yeah, I was flattered on your behalf when I said
thank you.
It's like, well, they're obviously not talking about me. So.
What are you talking about? You know how to say Ohayou gozaimasu. I mean, whatever. Also, I feel like my pronunciation is pretty bad on this show, so sometimes, like, I don't know. But it's been interesting being able to look at this from that perspective.
I can indicate that there are 6 of us and say thank you,
and that's all like holding up your fingers.
That's all we really needed to do with.
Basically, walk into a place and like show them Jane's allergy card and make sure nobody died, and it was pretty good. All right, cool. I guess on the kind of on that note, like on the note of actually it's a good segue, like learning new things and trying new things. So all our next questions are about podcasting, which is like, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but we're not professional podcasters by any means.
One on TV.
Yeah, definitely. We play one in our podcast. Someone asked us a long time ago, and I answered them directly. They asked about how we make the podcast or how we stay organized, and it's just like we make plans. But here's some other specific questions about podcasting. The first one is, how do you guys record the episodes? I think it's been mentioned that you use Skype, but I was wondering if you'd go into further detail. I don't know how podcasts are created, and I think it's really cool. So that was also from Alice/Shelby in an email sent to us.
We use this thing called Squadcast, which is great, except for when it's not.
Yes, also not sponsored. We started out using Skype, but there was a problem, and the problem was that Kayla's sound was bad, and and there was another problem, I think, with the recording thing that we were using. I can't remember exactly what happened, but the quality wasn't that great. And I went back and listened to the episodes, and I'm really glad we switched to this, even though it does. So what Kayla's referring to is that this sometimes just like drops our connection in the middle of recording, but basically, like,
usually there's like a lead up, like you can feel it starting to go, and you're like, oh, we're about to lose it, but every once in a while it's just like gone, and we're like, oh, okay.
It just happened like 5 minutes ago. Sometimes if you hear us talking about something, and it'll be like, we'll be in the middle of a topic and things will be going really great, and then suddenly it's just like, yeah, anyway, that thing, that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to stay on topic when you have like 2 minutes where it's just like a dropped connection, but it does this cool
reconnect.
It does, but it does this really cool thing, which is like, I've heard other people. So sometimes I've heard other podcasters use like Skype, but then they'll record on their own computers. So basically what this thing does is that it connects us so that we can hear each other, and it records our things separately, and it stores them in the cloud. There's a fee associated with this, but also not sponsored. We're using this tool called Squadcast. It's pretty great. I think I talked about it on the Tumblr before, and it's helped us because there's always like a backup of our recordings, and like we can talk to each other, and the quality's good, even though it's recorded online. So it's nice. We both have good quality. The problem, I remember what the problem was. The problem was before was that because we were recording both our things at the same time, it recorded as one sound file. So I could never change, like if I was like really loud and the Kayla was really quiet, I could never change it. So now when we edit it, the tracks are separate, so I can manipulate them so we can have better overall sound quality because of it. So that's how we record.
Now my poor microphone got a chance to shine.
Yes. I was like, man, Kale's microphone's not that great. No, it turns out Kale's microphone was great all this time. It's just that our Skype was bad, which makes sense. It's not for recording sound. It's for like having a call and then hanging up. Like, it's not really the purpose for high quality sound recording. So.
I affectionately pet my microphone when I said that, by the way.
Very good. On that note, like if you want to do something, like you want to start a podcast, there's a very like low cost to entry essentially. Like you can just record with your computer with a microphone, and you just need to have a place. The way that podcasts work is that we upload a sound file to a website, and that gets syndicated to all these different like services like iTunes, or the Google Podcast thing or Stitcher or whatever. So basically all you have to have is like a microphone and some kind of host to host your episodes and distribute them, and then content to talk about, and you can have your own podcast. So there's a relatively low like kind of cost to entry and maintenance. And if you're like you can also use something like YouTube, which is free, right? You can upload your content for free. It'll be syndicated to your like followers, but it's not going to go to like an app. So if you want to create content, you can also do that. There's a lot of like really great free ways to distribute your own content now. So if that's something you want to do, I highly encourage people to also pursue their creative endeavors. I think a thing to also remember is like nothing is going to be right the first time. Like we test recorded the first episode and it was really crappy. There's a whole like we had to re-record the first 2 episodes of this podcast. We've had to re-record others. Like sometimes things have to change and you got to try new things and be willing to experiment, and that's part of being a creative person. I know there's probably a lot of people who like draw and do things, produce things, who listen to this podcast, but that's another just like random rant life advice. If you so try new things, learn new things, and keep trying new things if you pursue your creative endeavors, and recognize that things are going to be, if you've never done it before, there's going to be testing that needs to be done and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that's how we make this podcast. Make a lot of notes and then we record it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I make my notes in an actual notebook because
Yeah,
I'm an old person.
Listen, you do you. I have to type a lot. So
I like physical notes.
It's very nice. I almost did that. I did that one time where I like annotated the manga, and it worked okay, but I like having a full script. Oh, I guess like another thing to say is like so sometimes there are episodes that I don't prepare in time but we need to record, and so like the summary is just like winged. I think you can tell they're not as great. Yeah, story time with Ellen. I basically like read to Kayla from the manga, trying to insert things in between.
Yeah, as for the actual like physical, when we sit down and record, on my end, I have my notebook with my notes and the manga with me, and I flip along with it as she goes through her summary.
Yeah, I didn't realize that until like 2 episodes ago, or like really recently, and you were like, oh, you were laughing at something, and I was like, what? And she's like, oh, I just saw this thing. I was like, oh, I didn't realize you were like, reading along. Like, that's fun. I like it. Yeah, usually, I guess when we physically record, I sit in my closet. I'd make jokes about it a lot because, but the sound quality is best in the closet. The reason is because there's like I can close the door, there's not a lot of interference from other sound, and also because you have clothes hanging, it has a better acoustic quality. The sound is like deadened, so there's not a lot of echo. One time we recorded I was in, all of our house that I live in is like wood floors everywhere, so sound reverberates a lot. So one time I recorded in a place where it wasn't the closet, and when I was editing it, I was like, like it doesn't sound that different. But every time I tried to cut something short or cut something off, there's like a longer echo because the sound is echoing. So it was a pain in the ass to edit. So now I always sit in the closet, and it's fine. It's a nice quiet place. Yeah. It can get kind of hot.
I just sit at my desk. I have a carpeted room, so
yeah, you probably don't have as much sound echoing. I don't know.
I have a carpeted room and a blanket on the wall.
So it's perfect sound deadening.
Yeah. It's a decorative blanket, but the reason it's on the wall and nothing else is on my wall is because I needed to stop the echoing.
Did you really? Nice.
Yeah.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah, I have a couple other things on my wall now, but that was the first thing and only thing on my wall for a really long time because it was so echoey, and I was like, I need something, so I'm gonna put up this decorative blanket I have. Yes.
So yeah, that's home studio life. I record in a closet. It's pretty great. I don't mind, and I also bring the manga with me, so we often sometimes you hear like page flipping noises because we're like actually looking something up. I usually bring the Japanese version with me in case Kayla asks me a question, which sometimes happens. So yeah. Oh, I think you're asking the next question.
Right. This one is from another good username, Dirk Gently Into That Good Night.
Yes.
On Tumblr. It says, if you were to record a podcast about any other manga anime besides Fruits Basket, what would you pick? I would love to hear something else from y'all when you reach the final chapter of Furuba.
There's a boo inserted in there too.
Yeah.
Yes, this person also says, thank you for giving me warm fuzzies once a week. You're welcome. It's our pleasure, I should say. Yeah, so we have discussed doing other things in the future. The main candidate right now is Fullmetal Alchemist. which is another great series. And by main candidate, I mean Kayla's making a plan for it already. It's happening. So
it's my favorite series. So.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that when we discussed this previously, I was like, we should do Furuba because that's my favorite series, really, in reality. And then you were like, and then also FMA. And I was like, that's also great. So yeah, we should do that. I haven't, the really interesting thing is that, I haven't read all of FMA. So we'll see how this goes. I read it, most of it, or like a good chunk of it a long time ago. But I'm really excited to actually just like read it and get really into it.
Yeah. I've actually just recently sat down and started to try and kind of make notes on how it would be split up. Physical notes.
Yeah, of course. She sent me a photo and it was like a picture of a printed out thing and I was like, interesting. Commitment to.
Yeah. It's I knew I'd have to have it physically in front of me to make physical pen notes on it, or otherwise I'd never be able to figure out how to split it. I was literally I had my printout and I was sitting on the floor in front of my bookshelf, like, flipping through the chapters and like being like, I guess I could break up these two, and so it's challenging. Just as a preview of how challenging it is, the ending sequence of Fullmetal Alchemist, like all of the ending events, basically start at the mid '80s and go through chapter 108, the final chapter. So.
That's great. Also, all the chapters are much longer than Fruits Basket. Like page wise, they're all really long. So.
Yeah, and like even like some of them I could only break down into like 3 chapters on my like first pass through.
Yeah.
It's like, how the hell do I break this up? So
that's a good time. Yeah. Fortunately, the very beginning of Furuba, we're at this point where there's more moving parts, so it'll be a little bit more challenging, but most of Furuba is like, here's a setup and here's a resolution. Like a lot of the beginning is like this thing gets set up in one chapter and then gets resolved right away, or like has some kind of resolution. Yeah. But yeah. No, FMA's not like that.
No. Yeah, it's everything is just keeps moving in Fullmetal Alchemist. Yeah. I think the length might balance out since we won't have a spoiler section.
Yes, right. We can't talk about spoilers.
Yeah, since you are not fully spoiled. So
that's true. You can you can send a little note. You can make an add-on that I just like won't listen to or something if you want.
Yes. So that's very, very slightly in the works.
It's there's plans afoot. Yeah. But I don't know. There's not like a timeline or anything. For it. Yeah. Yeah, that's the last question that we have that's not spoilery, which I think is a good place to end on. Plans for the future. So, okay, since we kind of talked about future plans, I also have an announcement, which is that we have a Ko-fi now. So, it's ko-fi.com/Stay Together Network. I'll put some links or something somewhere. Like, I'll put it in the... we decided that maybe Stay Together Network would be a good name because maybe we'll have this other podcast. Theoretically, these are our plans, so maybe we put them all together. So, yeah, I'll put links in the like episode notes and places and stuff, but if you like the content that you're listening to, I'm not good at this kind of like plugging thing or whatever, but if you like the content that we're putting out, you can buy us a little Ko-fi, and then that'll basically like a Ko-fi. The money will go to things like paying for our hosting so that we can do more podcasts and stuff. Like, I don't know, man, we don't need to be famous podcasters, but it's just to pay for to keep this content available essentially. So it would be really, I would appreciate it. I'm digging my toe. I still haven't gotten the hang of this audio medium, and I just want you to know that I'm digging my toe into the ground and like looking bashfully at the microphone. So that's my thing that I wanted to say. I'm always surprised that we haven't gotten any like flames. All of our messages that we get from people are so nice. Like they're very, very kind and complimentary. We got another shout out on a podcast a long time ago, like back in April when we just started. We just maybe we're like 6 or 7 episodes in or something on another podcast called Manga Mavericks. And it was which is a great podcast. You should also listen to it. They do a lot of stuff about like manga news and stuff, anime news, and it's also very interesting. It was such a complimentary shout out. It was very touching. I don't know. I feel like we've gotten a lot of interesting, very kind comments, and I really appreciated everyone sending us their questions, and I really enjoyed answering them. So hopefully you enjoyed listening to us answer them.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So on all those announcements and good feels, next week, so we have a couple, I think we should discuss some spoiler things, and then we have spoiler questions. Like there's some questions that people asked us that I felt like were too spoilery to answer, even in the things that we alluded to and slightly spoiled when we were talking just now. So we'll talk about those, and we'll talk about some spoiler things for what's to come after the music. Next week, our episode that's coming out is only going to cover chapter 66, there's like, again, like story breakup reasons for why we're doing that. So next one will be just chapter 66. It's just a one-off this time. But yeah, it'll be a good time. We're going back to school. Summer's gonna be over finally. It's gonna be a good time. So yeah, thank you all for listening as always and for sending all your questions.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
I had fun.
It was an embarrassment of riches as far as questions go.
Yeah, it really was.
More than I expected us to get. So
Same.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so we'll see you all next time for more Furuba fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, we're back to talk about spoilers. Woo! The things that I wanted, the things that I had in mind for discussion were just like, I just wanted to chat with you about what's coming up. It's not really a formal kind of discussion, but here are the things that I listed. We can go through them. So I just put student council everything. Is that why you're laughing?
Yeah.
Yes. So obviously, like when we come back to school, we're gonna get all the more student council interaction than you could hope. It's just, I know it's exciting. It's gonna be a good time.
Yeah, and we've talked about like, we were just talking a whole bunch about like all the like Yuki development that like had surprised us on like, you know, reading later chapters and stuff, and a lot of that comes with the student council. So
yeah, and I talked about why I liked Machi and all that other stuff. So yeah, I like Machi because she's great. First of all, she's the only person who sees Yuki as like a regular human, which is nice. Other than like Toru, I guess, but in a different way. Another thing that I have that's coming up is like Rin and Toru's kind of connection. First of all, like Rin avoided becoming friends with her so far, but we'll get to see them become closer as much as Rin tries to avoid it. And then, of course, kind of working together. I don't know if they really just work together, but they kind of align on the fact that they're trying to break the curse. So that's always interesting.
If I remember right, Tori's like, let's work together. Rin's like, no.
Typical.
Yeah, but then kind of does it anyway.
Yeah, basically. Because she can't resist.
Yes.
And then some other big things that are coming are like the fact that Kureno's curse is broken, and that Miji and Hiro's also break like during the series before everybody's does. Yep. And then of course the biggest perhaps reveal of the series, which is that Akito is a woman's coming up. Yep. And then all the stuff with Ren. So Ren was mentioned last 2 chapters or something like that. Last 3 or 4 or something. And like all of the kind of like backstory relationship with Ren and Akito is coming, and like the things that we have yet to see, like their fight that kind of precipitates everything getting fucked up, like when Akito stabs Kureno and goes to find
and
Toru.
Also all the stuff with Akira, we get that backstory.
Yes.
We haven't really seen anything about yet.
Yes. So I think we will get some backstory about the previous god/head of the family and stuff about that we sort of talked about. It's going to be a good time. I think we're going to see some of these themes.
I think that introduces some like interesting twists to the like whole dynamic of the family, because Akira was the head of the family, but he wasn't God. So.
And like it was interesting the comment that Akito makes that is like, who does Ren think the head of the family is and stuff like that. I mean, they obviously have a fucked up dynamic. I think as we discussed in our last episode, so it'll be interesting to see that come out also. And then all the stuff with between Rin and Akito is going to happen, which is sad and scary. Not looking forward to that, but that's okay. And we'll get to see the curse breaking, I guess. No big deal.
I do want to comment on something that you made me think of in the non-spoiler section. You're talking about the whole like idea of like being like outside, and it had the whole thing with Akito being like physically outside of the house in this like previous chapter, and that's kind of a limited thing, and that winds up being a big thing at the very end where Toru realizes that Akito, by being treated as above everyone else, that's basically the same thing as being treated as outside.
Yes.
So even Akito's like an outsider in her own way. So it's definitely a big theme.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, I'm so excited to see those. I'm just trying to think of anything else. We'll get to see further romance. These like we talked about like the last episode. We talked about like the non-love triangles that are happening, and we'll get to see that develop, and Yuki's relationship develop with Machi, and
get to see Momiji's growth spurt.
I noticed in the beach arc he's like already slightly taller than Toru, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I should comment on this now, but didn't seem like the right time. But soon, yes. Soon. All of them are getting so tall.
We get to see sort of Cinderella.
The greatest play of all time. What was I gonna say? I mean, we get to see more with like Kagura too. Like Kagura comes back.
Yeah, we get to see more of her and Kyo's kind of backstory relationship stuff, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and her kind of relationship with Toru and Rin, I think a little bit, mostly Toru.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like the big things that are left. I think they're heading toward these, the resolution of Akito letting go of thinking that only, controlling people is going to bring her the affection that she wants. And, like the resolution that Toru is looking for. Oh, we're going to learn about Kyoko and Katsuya. I forgot that we hadn't talked about that when we were talking about questions before. But yeah, we're going to get to see what actually happened between them when Toru was little.
Yeah. And more of the Kyo and Kyoko connection.
Yeah, that's right. And Toru's kind of like deal with her father. Her grandpa's gonna come back for that like one scene or whatever, a couple scenes.
Yeah, he has a couple of cute scenes. In the latter half. Yeah, he does. Some stuff that's coming up in the short term that I really enjoy is the parent-teacher conferences.
Yes. Well, I love any scene with Mayuko, but
yeah, like there's both funny stuff, but there's also some like really touching and emotional stuff in a couple of those. So.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot, especially between like Yuki and Ayame, I think.
Yeah, I really like the Yuki and Ayame conference, and also the whole thing with their mother is just interesting.
It is interesting. It's kind of interesting character. It's like another character you love to hate.
Yeah, and that scene kind of becomes almost a turning point for her too. Yeah, she starts to like she's still like awful, but starts to kind of seems to be sort of accepting that she can't control her children anymore and stop trying.
Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah, I think those are the things we have to look out for coming up. It's going to be an exciting time. And hopefully they'll get animated. Some of them sooner than others. We got more backstory about Kyo's mom too. There was a bit. It's been kind of like peppered in, but I think we get the final, like what happened to her. Yeah. Is also shown as well. Yeah,
realizing that his father is even more of a dick than he is already.
Yeah, he's already a dick, but now he's going to be even more of a dick. Any other things that we want to comment on that are coming? I feel like this is a short spoilery section.
Yeah.
We've just been leading up to everything to now.
Yeah, it's exciting. A lot of my favorite scenes are still to come, so.
Yeah. Spoiler questions. Let's ask them real quickly.
Okay.
So the first one was very specific, and it was like, have you seen the Tumblr post? This is from Steven Universe. Have you seen the Tumblr post? I don't know if I can find it. I saw it ages ago. That talks about how other versions of the Zodiac story, I think like the Philippines, I also think like tagging on to this, I think Vietnam maybe, include the cat but exclude the rabbit. It makes for an interesting angle that Kyo and Momiji's relationship. Also, imagine a world where Toru falls for the outcast rabbit and Kyo is the unrequited love and has like a shocked emoji and a thinking emoji, which is great. Agree. Yes, I've heard. Yes. I don't know. You answer this question first.
I hadn't really heard of this specifically. I think I was vaguely aware that other versions existed with some animals swapped out, but
yes.
I don't know if I'd heard that version specifically, but it is kind of interesting in the context of Fruits Basket because we talked about how, like, Kyo and Momiji are both kind of outsiders in their own way.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, even compared to the other Zodiac members.
And they have that kind of connection. I don't know if they know that specifically about each other, but they definitely have this kind of connection that others don't seem to have with them.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, Momiji is generally kind of accepted by everybody, but I don't think anybody has, like, a super close relationship with him other than, like, Kyo and...
Yeah. And I think Momiji has, like, always had one of the closer relationships with Kyo outside of the other Zodiac.
Yeah, it seems like.
Inside of the other Zodiac members. I think he's even the one, like, later on... Like, I think it's during the same conversation where he, like, basically tells Kyo is, like, I'm going to steal Toru from you if you don't, like, get your shit together, basically. But he also says, like, how he's going to, how, like, they've all been, like, ignoring the whole issue of the cat and stuff and just kind of accepting that's the way it is and saying, like, he's going to stop ignoring it and stop giving up on the cat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Which
he's
is a good scene.
Characters to say that.
Yeah. But yeah, so he says it directly, like, basically, like, I'm going to stop accepting that this is just okay.
Yes, for sure. And then imagine a world where Toru falls for the outcast rabbit. Yeah, well, that's what fanfic is for. I mean,
yeah.
I think they'd be a good pair.
We were talking about it recently.
I said I think they'd be a good pair, though.
Yeah, we were talking like in the last episode about how like Kyo and Toru have this like deep connection forged pretty early on. That's kind of hard to shake, but I
Yeah,
do think like I could see Toru falling for Momiji without that
yeah. It's
without that existing.
yeah. I mean, if she didn't have such a close relationship with Kyo, I mean, I feel like it's a possibility.
Hmm.
They have, I think they just don't have the opportunity to be close like Kyo and her live in the same house. They can
Hmm.
see each other all the time. They have
Yeah.
a lot of opportunity to just like have a deeper
Hmm.
connection.
Yeah, but like she does have a pretty like close relationship with Momiji, even though they don't have as much time together. Just in like they're among the more physically affectionate
Mm-hmm.
pairs and have a lot of like know each other's you know deep issues and stuff and
Yeah, they both have complicated relationships with their
hmm
mothers
yeah.
and their families. I guess like they're both their parents. Because Toru
Hmm.
has sort of a complicated relationship with her father, even though he's
Yeah.
not alive as well. And I mean, Mobiji probably does too. He doesn't. It's not explicit, but
Yeah.
um, and I think they have a
Hmm.
connection. They kind of help each other a lot. They kind of cover for each other, like Toru does at
Hmm.
the beach, and then later Momiji helps her like sneak in and gives Kureno the Sword of
Yeah.
Cinderella
Yeah,
DVD and
and
stuff like that.
some of their scenes together really like are borderline romantic. Like
Yeah,
if they were like in another series, like you would think they were like the romantic couple.
yeah, yeah. Toru asks him, makes a request for him to play "Wish Upon a Star" or whatever it
Hmm. Yeah,
is on the
and that's another one
violin.
that has them like with their faces close together and
Yeah,
stuff.
they
So.
have a physically intimate relationship, which most of the
Yeah.
characters don't, I guess.
Hmm.
Other than like
Yeah.
Akito, who's constantly draped on other people.
Yeah.
Like Momichi is
Hmm.
not shy about asking for physical affection, whereas I think some of the
Yeah.
other characters are. So
Yeah.
as is established, that is
Hmm.
uncomfortable for them. So have we sufficiently imagined a world where yeah we don't have to imagine it's there. I think
Hmm.
it's a potential that's set up,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
I think nobody understands Toru like Kyo does, even Momiji.
Yeah.
So okay, speaking of
All
Kyo,
right.
last
Yeah.
question.
Last question. Do we know why the cat is the only one with a true form? Is it just because he's the monster or something else? What are your thoughts on this?
Yes, it's also Alice from
Yeah.
email. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I I think this is like the reason I put this in the spoilers is because I think that this is revealed in the very end of the series, like chapter 130
Hmm.
something, 131 maybe,
Yeah.
where the bond god was a person who lived alone and the cat came. I just reread this and now I'm super
Hmm.
fresh on the details, but
Yeah, I remember. I can't remember everything I said, but like back when we did the true form arc,
yes.
I know in the spoilers in that episode, I had like a deep like dive on like all my feelings about the cat spirit because I had also recently read the last chapters and that in relation to all the true form stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, hmm
The cat in the original bond with God, the cat was basically forced to join in this like eternal party
hmm
that they were having, and all the other animals voluntarily joined, and the cat
hmm
piped up and was like, no, I don't want this. Like, I
hmm
liked living my life with you guys, but I don't want things to stay the same forever. Things have to change. Like, we have to move on.
hmm
And all the other animals felt betrayed by that, and God felt betrayed by that.
hmm
So I think because of that, it's not explicitly said in that chapter that that's why, but I think because of that sort of like warped, nature of the
hmm
curse, the cat returns as this form with this additional form that is
hmm
like a warped version of a cat, essentially, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah. And I think I talked about it a bit back then. I kind of
Yeah,
feel like it might be like
you did.
the cat's resentment
Yeah.
of like being forced into this bond he didn't want to be in and being like shunned by who used to be all his closest friends
Mm-hmm.
and because the cat was the first animal in the story
Yes.
to approach God and befriend him.
In the story, the quote unquote like
Hmm.
real story that we
Yeah.
get from Takaya at the end. Yes.
And so I kind of wonder like because it's not ever like explicitly shown if it was
No.
always like that, if he always had that like more twisted form or if it changed over
It's
time or
possible.
yeah. But yeah, I have a lot of feelings about the cat spirit.
Yes. So many feels.
That like one of the very last panels of the series is the like has the picture of like God welcoming the cat back, and I like that made me cry the first time I read that
Oh.
part, like
It's a good one.
because it says something about how like it's like the very ending. I love the way it's like framed. It's talking about like how the cat wanted god to be able to go out and make friends and have other relationships outside of this, like, tiny, like, close enclosed bond with the animals. And it shows like Akito and Toru hugging, and it says like, and after many, many years the cat finally got his wish, and then it has the like god greeting the cat again. It's really sweet.
Yeah, it's very sweet. It's and I agree with you. I think like we very, very early on, also maybe another reason why that the person commented about Japanese, we talked about Mononoke. Says that the possession that the somas are possessed by Mononoke, like, which are vengeful spirits. So like, what is the context of vengeance here? And I think like we have a stronger representation of the cat as being like representative of, I don't know, I mean, I guess it's like vengeance, but not being cool with the situation that everyone else was put in.
It's like the cat never wanted this and is being punished for being pulled into the thing he never wanted, basically. So.
Basically. So of course, the physical manifestation of the cat then becomes warped over time. At least maybe that's what we can say. Yeah. Which I think more generally,
I think more generally we can say it's kind of a physical representation of the warped bond, just in general, between them all. It's like,
if the cat is the origin, then if the origin is warped, then maybe you can extend it to say like the whole thing is fucked up because it wasn't what anybody intended. I guess so that's one interpretation, which I think is like what we're meant to draw from the last part. But of course there's the interpretation that the cat, some of them say like the cat is like a scapegoat. It's like everybody can be like, well, at least I'm not the cat, at least I'm not the one who transforms into the cat, at least I don't have to be locked up. Which I guess stems from the cat not being cool with the original promise that was made, but it almost like gives the other possessed people something to kind of cling to, that's like, well, at least I'm not as poorly off as the cat. But I think that comes more with like kind of the family culture over time, not necessarily
I think that's curse. Kind of like the same way the cat is like has become warped over time, the reasoning has become warped over time.
Like it's not like the cat was confined, all of them were confined before, right?
Probably not.
Well, like they all were sort of isolated together, right? Anyway, I don't know, I think that sufficiently answers that question about the true form. Is there anything else? Is there anything else we could say about Furuba right now, halfway through the series, or have we like talked it to death?
We've said quite a lot.
Yeah, we said a lot. We answered a lot of questions. I feel pretty good about it. Okay, cool. Well, okay, like I said, next time we're gonna be talking about chapter 66. You heard about our secret plans for another podcast. You can buy a Senko fee if you want to support us. You can send in your ask and your questions. I mean, I don't know. Just like a nice note is nice too. That's something I feel like I learned that we didn't talk about in this podcasting. I feel like just the positive feedback has also been really encouraging. So thank you very much. Always.
We're big on classical conditioning.
Yeah, basically. If you keep giving us compliments, we'll keep making stuff. Who isn't big on classical conditioning? That's what social media is for. I want that instant validation. All right, good. On that nice little banter, and I guess we can end for now. So yeah, next time we'll get back into regularly scheduled Furuba. It's gonna be a good time.
Halfway there.
Yeah, living on a prayer, as we said before. All right. Okay, we'll see you all next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.